Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info coming at you after the conclusion of an absolute gauntlet of a 67th annual Daytona 500, where unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection, William Byron is now the fifth driver now to score back-to-back Daytona 500 wins, joining Richard Petty, Cale Yarborough, Sterling Marlin, and Denny Hamlin. Under pretty unbelievable circumstances. He did not have the best car. He didn't seem to have the most attention, and he wasn't even in the best position at the end of the race. But ultimately, the way these particular accidents, and there were many, especially in the third stage, played out, he was in exactly the right spot to capitalize on the victory. And so, right as they were loading in the car from last year onto the hauler, they're going to have to drop another one off at Daytona, USA. So pretty crazy deal there for him. So congratulations to Byron there for the victory. We got a lot to cover here for sure. Our last show was back on Thursday after that very controversial second race in the duels, where the caution flag came out at the last possible second and really messed up what was going to be a really great finish between Eric Jones and Austin Cindric, where Jones had actually beat Cindric to the line and was denied the victory. Jones did not pull off the victory tonight. However, he did show the same speed. A great night for Legacy Motor Club. We'll talk about that at the same time here. But in this race here, one of the many things that did happen in it was no caution on the final lap of the race. That to me, what that tells me is NASCAR is hearing everybody on the inconsistency about it. Ironically, through giving us even more inconsistency. Yes, obviously a wreck, not nearly that big, and much closer to the finish line would have seen, a caution flag come out, earlier in this week. And, this one, it just kind of kept going and going, and it gobbled up a lot of cars, and you had people getting through the field there. But yeah, I mean, you think back to, you're going to see some episodes of 500 Days much later in the series, for example, where big wrecks happen on the last lap, in turn 2. And even though there's only about 2 cars left over, they're going to be battling it for the finish there. And even in this case, Reddick still did a pretty good job of actually, catching Byron there towards the end. Didn't really have a good chance at actually getting around him there, but all things considered, still gave the fans a green flag finish. And I think NASCAR knew that they were going to be raked over the coals even more than what would have actually happened here in this particular case. So I really don't, it doesn't surprise me too much that when that particular wreck happened, that this was going to be a situation there for that. So again, I think what I'm hopeful is that going forward, again, NASCAR needs to be more transparent on this. If this is now going to be the rule, that they're going to not throw the caution flag on the last lap if a wreck happens, at least until Byron crossed the line. I think that is a completely reasonable decision to do there in that position there, to actually have it be where the leader gets to the stripe. And then, you throw the caution flag, you make sure everybody knows, look, because I mean, at that point, they're still at race speed at the stripe. They need to be able to slow down by the time they can actually get over into turns 1 and 2. Well, actually, this was in turns 3 and 4, so they had even more of a lap to be able to slow down for that one. I think it was a reasonable solution on this, but I don't know what happened at the drivers' meeting. I don't know if that was known to be the case. I don't know if anybody here knows, definitely let me know. But that would have been something kind of interesting to find out there at the same time. Because I think that ultimately doing that was, it should be the rule. It should be the rule. There were people suggesting things about having a zone off of turn 4 where it's like anything goes. I still think a last lap anything goes rule is pretty much the easiest solution, especially from one track to the next. But again, it's hopefully we're seeing the beginnings of that. It could just be a coincidence, but whatever. But especially after everything up to this point, and seeing it being a factor in both the Friday and the Saturday races, that was something I'd feared after Thursday, but it definitely was the case here. It's just hopefully that's something that's the beginning of something positive there. So I think that's good. And I think it's also helpful for those that are the detractors of saying that, oh, well, we can't do that. It's like, was there a substantial difference in the response time of getting emergency equipment out there in this case than there would have been if they threw the caution? Like, really, they still have to slow the field down before you get the equipment out there to begin with. So what difference does it possibly make to just let them get to the finish? You know, the great thing about race cars is they go fast, so they can actually drive really fast to the finish line. And yeah, once the win is settled, you can freeze the field and determine the lineup afterwards. Nobody cares about all that, you know. I mean, compared to the winner, you know, and everything else operates after the race as to who won the race, and then and then everybody gets to, you know, experience a green flag finish. So I think that was a good decision on that. And hopefully something turns out there. So again, I think there was that for sure. Definitely with the caption here below, calling it a Pyrrhic victory. I do think while this was a very entertaining race, and I think had some decent, you know, we had a nice balance of decent green flag racing and also being able to kind of just make some crazy moves. The problem is it seemed like the only few times that crazy moves were made was they would actually cause accidents and, you know, really big multi-car accidents. And I'd like to pull up the second screen and kind of look at some of those here. I think that would be kind of a good way to analyze this tonight. But, you know, it still was like, I mean, it is getting to the point where it's like the Road Warrior situation. And it isn't new here. We've had a situation where you just get more and more wrecks, and they're bigger and bigger wrecks, and they're happening closer and closer to the end. And you have multiple overtimes and everything else. And it just seems to be just, it goes back to like that old Tony Stewart interview where he's like, I don't think we wrecked enough cars yet. You know, if we wreck about 5 or 6 more cars, that would be so much better, or something like that. We don't want to turn this into a destruction derby. And there were some that would probably argue that we were already there. And they would be justified in saying so, certainly from watching this one. It's unfortunate because that's not, I mean, the Daytona 500's always been a spectacle in its own right. At, you know, having a really big track, a track so big that even, you know, drivers that came out here back in 1959 didn't know what they were doing, and you would have big accidents. Lee Petty's career ended with a big accident in turn 1, or I guess it was turn 4 in that one. But you know, it's been a part of it, and this kind of dovetails into the Ryan Preece accident. Definitely want to talk about that too, because again, you know, what can be done? What can be done at this point here? Is it just drivers racing way over their heads? There was one accident that maybe leaned towards that, but you know, others maybe not so much. You know, is it just the car itself? Certainly its proclivity to flip over, or, you know, just running close nose to tail, or side by side. Is that is that something that needs to be fixed? And what can be fixed? I mean, I'm starting to think really they can run freeway speed out there, and you could still probably have a flip, you know, at that point, or just going to have a big multi-car accident anyway. Just tighten the field up more and more, and you're just going to have the exact same problem. Now, is the solution going to be taking off the restrictor plates and making them go way faster? Maybe, maybe not. I saw a good discussion earlier. Somebody else was tweeting that, you know, the best approach may be to actually have the cars be too fast for the track. And I know that gives me kind of glimpses back to like the, you know, the late 90s, early 2000s, where that was actually a complaint from some of the drivers. Whereas I think it was much more about the rigidity of the cars. But yeah, I mean, if you have the cars going too fast for the track, you're going to have to, you know, actually drive the car better. You're not going to overdrive the corners. You can't just mat the gas there all the way around. You know, that, I mean, I don't know if that's the solution or not. You know, if the cars are capable of going, you know, 220 miles an hour, are they going to go 220 miles an hour? I don't know. You know, because obviously if they did and something goes wrong, you're still going to have a very serious accident too. It's what I'm saying here is I'm glad I'm not the one that has to make that decision. But you know, I would like to think that the future of super speedway racing isn't going to necessarily involve this much carnage. Because when we had green flag racing in this race, now maybe some of it was about saving fuel and saving the car and just you know, not, you know, trying to ruffle anyone's feathers or anything. But I thought that was legitimately entertaining. You know, it reminded me of much of what we had in last year's race, where people were able to kind of just you know, run in formation and just kind of, you know, have these big drafting packs and actually have a good competition out there. But, you know, at the same time there, you know, I mean, I don't know how much of it was saving fuel. Watching the back of the field was interesting in the start of this race because we had so many exchanges for position in the back where you could tell people were really backing off a lot. And sometimes a car would close in so quick on the tail end of the field and pass so many cars that it just looked like it was like when you play like a video game and it's on an easier difficulty and you just kind of, Daytona USA style, you're kind of, slicing right through the pack, like literally in this case. It looked like that. And then the car would stall out. And then sometimes it would stall out so quickly too that other drivers had to duck out of the way. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the closing rate in the old super speedway package in 2001, talking about that in 500 days. It was a little bit, I could see the manipulation of that a bit. And I don't mean manipulation in a negative sense, because again, I think that, there is an element of strategy to this that's required by, the car having this much fuel and being able to go this far with this car and the drag, and everything. I think that's just part of the racing. So that doesn't really bother me as much. And especially if it's not wrecking, constantly, maybe you're going to get a 1 or 2 car wreck, kind of like what we saw with, Josh Berry and Zane Smith, at one point here too. But, it was interesting to see. And I liked that part of the race because it did remind me so much of last year. I think last year's race, maybe it's just how I remember it, but it seemed like, you were able to kind of see who was able to maneuver through the pack a bit better. In this race, it felt a little bit closer to kind of the Atlanta races where everybody, there are some changes for position. And indeed, they did say that there were more changes for the lead in this race before it was over than in the entirety of last year's 500. So this might just be how I perceived it versus what was actually happening here. But it seemed like there were more moves in the pack in last year's race than this one. I could be wrong about that. And that would be a different measurement than the actual number of lead changes too. So that was kind of my viewpoint here. But when things picked up at the end of this race, especially in the third stage, and short of wrecks, I mean, that was really exciting. I think in this race, the closing stages were way better than last year's race. It's just a shame that they were punctuated by really, really big wrecks that depleted the field so much. Because at one point we had 34 cars on the lead lap. And again, I think that, I think that's another measure of just how careful everybody was being out there, at least much of the field. I mean, obviously there were still drivers that, you have to run as hard as everyone else to kind of keep up the pace there. So that was good. But at the end, like the aggression was much more noticeable in this one. And I think that's why these wrecks just turned out to be as crazy as they turned out to be here in a little bit. So I think that would be another one to kind of look at the same time. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still getting my hands around this. I delayed doing the show here just a little bit because I'm still kind of getting my hands around where to feel about this. Not just because I picked Ryan Preece, who ended up, of course, getting the most spectacular accident this evening, and thank goodness he's okay. I'm glad I can laugh about it here tonight. Because Last Bro was laughing his head off here that my driver was getting into my pick here in our fantasy league was getting in a big wreck there. But of course, glad to see that he was okay out there, and certainly a sobering interview that he gave afterwards at the medical center there too. But good to see him okay, and so hopefully something gets figured out there too. I think there's a lot to say about some of these other incidents that happened. So I'm getting a little bit warm in this jacket, so I'm going to cut away here for just a moment, and when we come back, I'm going to pull up some videos of some of these incidents, and we'll kind of look over this together. So sit tight. Oh, wow, we have 175 people in here. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We got a lot more to come up here. If you'd like to stick around, it'll just be a minute here, and I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. All right. I need to do that more often. I try to kind of push through on these here, but I'm sweating like Roger Ebert, so I don't want to do that. All right. So let's get into the videos here. I want to kind of pull up a couple of these incidents that happened during the race here, and look at this. Let's get into the Hamlin Zane Smith one's pretty straightforward, but let's try this.
Something happened with the.
Okay, hang on. Alrighty. Indeed, something did happen. Alrighty. So, pulling over to the second screen. Oh, good. Okay. All right. Hang on. Maybe we'll do the race watch along ones. That'll be a little easier. Okay, there we go. It's a little bit less obstructed here, too. Let's see. Okay. Alrighty. Well, let's take a look at a couple of these. Let me refresh my memory on this one here. Ah, yes. Okay. All right. So this was more the pile up here that took out Martin Truex. That was a shame, too. I haven't gone through the leaderboard. I'm doing this a little backwards here. I know we've done that before. We kind of look at the leaders and talk about some of the great runs. It just feels like the field got so scrambled by these accidents. It's so hard to really kind of go into those a bit more. But let's see here. Do I really have much to say about this one here? I know people were saying that Nemechek was kind of part of this one, so I probably do need to kind of revisit this one here. Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, this one here. I mean, in the stage 2 incident, you can certainly see how the field stacked up. I had less of a concern. This is more like kind of a traditional super speedway accident, where just you got somebody lifts, the other person runs in the back of them, and then it's just somebody's going to get knocked around. And it's unfortunate for Helio Castroneves to be involved in this one. Obviously, Nemechek getting into Ross Chastain, that was it just got really tight here. Moving this back, let's move it back a little bit here. Yeah, I mean, he's already on Truex's quarter panel right when the chain reaction is kind of getting back to him. Let's see, where does it come in? Okay, you got Van Gisbergen here. He had nose damage. I know he was down on the apron for a lot of the late stages of the race there, too, so that was kind of a problem. Yeah, I mean, it's just, Nemechek was following Truex. It's just now you got people kind of pushing their way up the track, and it kind of creates this other line. And, but yeah, tipping Chastain, I mean, that's a dangerous situation. You obviously don't want, I mean, I don't think it was anything intentional, give him the benefit of the doubt, but I mean, anything where it's a right rear, it's going to be serious. And unfortunate that we did see that in some of these other incidents that happened a bit later. But this was, just gets right into the left rear of Castroneves there in this car. Just a rough weekend. I mean, on top of the fact that he needed the provisional, which again, I think, for the Daytona 500, I'm glad again that the decision to have one of these drivers come into the field and get a spot in the field that's guaranteed, if they have to request in advance. They can't be like a Cup Series regular, and they don't get any prize money or points for it. I don't have any problem with that, especially because it doesn't let people just, get eliminated from the field. That would have been a bigger issue there. The way some of these people were talking about this, it kind of felt like that was going to be, that was kind of their understanding of it. But, and again, I get it to an extent where, Mike Wallace isn't in the field, and there was a controversy over that. And then, Truex and Johnson, thankfully being the fastest in qualifying, so they were able to actually make the show. What if they didn't make the race? That would be another problem, too. But yeah. Let's see here. Hang on. Let's go into this. Yeah, Truex. I was surprised Truex had as much damage as he did in this accident. They said it was the oil cooler after the right front damage. I guess that's where it is in the current car here. But gets side swipes Chastain there coming across the track there. I thought they were going to keep going. I was kind of surprised when the crew just dropped the tool bag on like the hood of the car. And once again, the max camera angles in this were really, really good tonight. Like the onboard cameras were very helpful. The rewind function, especially for kind of breaking down AJ Allmendinger's engine problem there too, was extremely helpful in breaking that down. The one caveat I would give, and this is unfortunate, and is at the Clash, you could take screenshots of it. Now it seems to have a workaround where you can't do it. That's why those were kind of just taken on my phone, the pictures I was sharing during the race there too. It's unfortunate to have that extra step there and dropping quality a little bit. But things are what they are. I get that they probably don't want an issue with, property rights with their other programming. But anyway, all that aside, So yeah, so but Truex eliminated in this incident here too, coming into the garage area. And we got a couple other drivers spinning down to the apron. Okay, this is where I saw Herbst had that damage to the left rear, so this is where he got that from. Denny Hamlin doing a good job dropping back. The other thing that was really good with the onboard cameras to track here is for the first time in this race, we saw the effect of the changes to the damaged vehicle policy clock. But we're seeing a couple different angles of it from this particular race. In the case of the incident before this one that we didn't watch here, the one where Zane Smith and Josh Berry got involved in that, and they got some significant damage there. It was good to see that, yeah, they came down pit road, the crew worked on it for X number of minutes, then they go to the garage area, and NASCAR still called it the DVP over the radio. Now, I think this is something that probably the sanctioning body is going to need to adjust going forward, because I think this led to another controversy a bit later in the race. So Zane Smith goes into the garage area. They take a real long time getting it over. There's a staging area, and it's very interesting. It actually just occurred to me, this was different too. A lot of times in the past, certainly when a driver is out of the race, they would pull the car up directly to the hauler. We saw this with Chase Briscoe when he had the mechanical issue over at the Clash. We saw this, in other incidents there too. I mean, pretty much most of the last place battles where a car is even towed to the garage there. But in this case here, there was another garage area. It kind of reminded me more like Darlington's garage. It was an open air space, and it seemed to have a lot of the team's toolboxes in there. And they kind of staged it as a place where the teams would go that they would actually complete repairs. And even Truex's car headed this direction. So it seems like this is like, it's like what we had at the Clash, actually, where you had a designated pit area. And that was just because of the dimensions of the track, so I didn't really think anything of it. They just did a short track style where you can, have a quick exit from the track and a quick re-entrance in turn 4. But in this case, they're kind of doing the same thing here. And I'll be interested to see from one racetrack to the next where they stage this area. But yeah, it was an open-air garage well past the garages where they actually had the cars worked on. This was a very different space that was kind of like more of a, it looks like maybe they parked equipment trucks or something there. But that was an area where the teams could work on the cars. And they probably did that. I mean, this is just a guess, but my thinking is that they did this in this area just so they could have NASCAR officials watch what was happening much easier versus the garage with like the fan zone and all that, where, they kind of have their own separate areas and all that. It was interesting they used this because every car that was damaged in this race that was getting repairs, including Zane Smith's and Josh Berry's car, were both getting repaired in this same area. And that was cool to see. I'm very excited about that because I think for me and what I do in my trackside coverage, we're looking at doing Talladega and Rockingham here coming up, is I'm going to have to really understand where that area is and keep myself near that. So I think that's going to be really cool. And I was glad to see that. And we did see both the 38 and the 21 return to the track after repairs. It took about 50 laps for the 38 to get back out there, and about 40 laps for the 21. Now, ultimately, Berry pulled the car off a second time, and at this time, he actually pulled up to the hauler, and they were done for the day. They ended up in the bottom 5 finishers there. But the 38 kept going. And at a track, maybe at a super speedway, we're not going to see as much of an effect of this because you could have a situation where a driver has a lot of damage and they're not able to get back up there and compete. But at a short track, at a road course, at some place where again, you could actually advance your position a bit easier, I think it'll be great. And when it comes down to the playoffs, say where, again, as much as I'm not a fan of the playoffs, but if it's a matter where a playoff contender has a mechanical issue or, gets in a wreck or something like that, or spins out and is on 4 flat tires and can get back out there, tracking that progress, I think is going to be something very exciting. So I'm really glad with that. And as talked about on the show last time, the It's Live graphic was getting reused again a lot more, and I anticipate that's going to be big. So I'm glad I picked this year to upgrade my graphics just a little bit by having the car numbers on there. Hopefully it'll make it a little bit easier for you guys to track what's going on. And I'm going to try to keep an eye on that. Usually in the past, I just look at the last place finisher and then that's it. But I may try to kind of focus more on other teams that are in the garage area, especially if they're trying to return. Certainly the track side, I plan to do that. But in this, when I do my remote races, like the ones from here, I'm going to see if I can do that as well. It worked out well in this because, again, so much of the first part of the race seemed to be a bit calmer. I'll see how well that works in other events too, but I'll keep that in mind at the same time. So that was good to see. So, but the controversy that came up, and I'm reminded of this because of Kyle Busch, Bob Pockrass tweeted during the closing stages of this race that Kyle Busch was back to the garage area because of the DVP. And he thought that they were going to be able to repair the car. And I don't know what happened. I don't know. I wasn't looking at his onboard camera, so I don't know if he actually pulled into that open air garage area where you're supposed to get repairs, or if he didn't, or if he just went to the team's hauler. But there was some kind of a mix-up, and the team wasn't allowed to repair it. And indeed, you did see him in that last wreck. It looked like he was pretty much done for the day when he hit the wall on the inside. But he did keep going. He tried to keep going, and he was trying to kind of get that momentum going. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out for him. And I think what may have happened is when he went to the garage, NASCAR still said, okay, 8 to the garage DVP. And in the past, that means you're out of the race. And, there's a lot of times where a driver was out under the DVP, and they wouldn't even bother to do a later confirmation. A lot of times officials, somebody comes in for a mechanical issue, they go back, and they say like 35 to the garage mechanical. That would be Riley Herbst in this case. They would be working on the car. And then later on, if the issue is terminal, they'll say 35 out brake issue, or 35 out brakes would be in that case. But if it's DVP, that's usually it. It's sometimes they'll have the official come on and say, okay, 35 out accident. Not all the time though. If it's a DVP, they may just leave it there. So I think what happened with Kyle Busch is they said 8 out, 8 to the garage DVP. And then they just got a little confused, and they're like, okay, he's out of the race. And there was some miscommunication there, and they weren't allowed to repair it. Now, he wasn't going to win the race. By the time the area where you can repair the car is so far from the garage exit, and I think that's another thing they're doing to still try to disincentivize these teams from actually making repairs. Well, again, we'll see how this is at other tracks. Maybe that's not the case. But I think here at Daytona, that may have been a part of why they picked this area. I'd love to learn more. I mean, it was tremendously instructive, I thought, from seeing it on camera here. But that's, I think, what was going on there. So anyway, we'll go into these accidents a bit more here. I don't know if I have much more to say about this one here in particular. Terrible night for Trackhouse here with these two, with Chastain and Castroneves is getting wiped out here. Yeah, I mean, again, definitely, was Nemechek like trying to avoid this, or did he just swerve like right into him? I don't know. I mean, I could see maybe, the spot. I mean, I don't know what the spotter was saying at this time, but you got a whole line of cars in front of him cutting to the right, and he's probably just thinking, get left and get out of it. But again, I certainly don't see him flicking, Chastain into that wreck intentionally. But again, I think the quickness of that decision, especially when he wasn't clear, and you got Custer's car right under him here too. I think that was just a quick deal. So let me get into another one here, something that has a bit more to talk about here. We got that. Okay, that was the one in stage 2. A good move by Blaney there with Cindric. Again, as you can see, pulling this just on the NASCAR page here to kind of get these. Okay, yes, let's get into this. Okay, so certainly one of the most controversial wrecks in this particular race. Let's get this bigger on the screen here. Okay. All right. So Last Bro picked Ricky Stenhouse for this race. So I was watching him extra closely at the end of this race here. And this was going to be kind of an interesting deal here. So again, Kyle Busch has already kind of recovered from that first incident of his backup here. Again, I know people were poo-pooing on Nemechek here for maybe that earlier incident, but here he is again, right in the mix. I still think it was a great day for him. I admit some bias in that because I've been ready for the Legacy Motor Club resurgence here, and I will see if this translates outside the super speedways, but I'm on board for it. But that's not about the story here. It's about these two right here, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Joey Logano. Now, you got Corey LaJoie up here, too. By the way, great job by Corey tonight here in the 0-1 car. I know, him getting that position there in the duels and being able to transfer into the main event, great job for him. And the backstory there about, tapping the kids' college fund there to get this car out there, great deal. Great job, for him there too. And he got up there, he was leading laps, he was a contender in this, got spun out there in one of these incidents there at the end, unfortunately back in the order, but not for lack of trying. And as I mentioned on Thursday, I know it's been frustrating from his performance these last few years at Spire. He really felt like that was going to be the team where he was going to take off. And I know, there's some, some back and forth there on, the trajectory of his career, but I'm sure that's something that he's felt as well. But this is, this was a very positive thing. And I think, hopefully, if there's not too much damage to that car, we may see that 0-1 again at Talladega. I don't know that, but that would be something that would be, I'd definitely be interesting to see that after this performance here. But anyway, so Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Joey Logano coming off the corner here. Now, this video starts a little bit late in the sequence, pulling it all the way back here. There's debatably about a car width here of space here between Stenhouse and Blaney. And the field is still separated pretty well, like it had been for most of this race here. So you don't have a full stack up. Gregson's pretty close to the back of Logano. And you could argue perhaps that he's already pretty close in the middle of this stack up here. There's already, this line maybe is already stacking up behind Stenhouse. So maybe this wreck would have happened no matter what anybody did here. But we'll find out. But Stenhouse is trying to protect this line. He's trying to still follow LaJoie, who himself is already running pretty high coming off the corner here. But now coming down. But they're not, they're not lined up very well. And the 22 is coming in here. So now at this point, Stenhouse is coming down with yes, a pretty late block. Logano is right in there too. He's still coming down here. What was frustrating to me is, okay, here we go. They come off the corner. You got the transition from the banking to the, the flat or the flatter part, and they seem to spread out a little bit again. So, okay, we're gonna try to frame by frame this as best as possible here. I guess we can do the, oh, okay, no, not that way, not that fast forward. But yeah, Logano coming in here. This hole is closing quick. Like Stenhouse is coming down the hill. He's going to throw the block. There's not any room. But Logano can't really back off too much because he's got these other cars behind him without running into him here. But he could stack it up because now there's some distance further back. Now, if he stacks up this line here, are you going to end up with an accident like you had at the beginning, that earlier part of the race there, the one that Kyle Busch spun out in and the Chastain one? You could have that. But maybe you're, at this point here, it's all about saving your own car. It's all about saving your own equipment. And he could have done that. And this isn't the last lap of the race. We're about, just outside the last 10 laps when this happened? We don't have the counter on here. But again, you definitely have a bit of a cyclone here. But okay, coming off here, look at this. Okay, Stenhouse goes over here kind of to the middle. Now, there's a decision to be made at this point. Do you force your car between these two here when you have maybe a car length? You got your teammate down here a little bit lower in Blaney. Can you cut here a little bit to the left? You don't really have that option, no, because you got Kyle Busch right here, and you're pretty much touching at this point. But you got Stenhouse here. Stenhouse in this position, if he goes up a little bit higher, he's got no drafting help. He's going to drop back, and we are close enough to the finish that is going to have some kind of an effect. So really at this point here, I think Logano is just trapped, and it looked that way from the onboard. He just can't get out of this, and it's like, oh crap! Like where do I go? You can't back off. You can't go to the left. You got tons of traffic here. You can't go to the right because you got Stenhouse like still coming down, and then on top of that, oh, see, look at that. They even actually kind of moved a little bit more to the left there, or moved to the right a little bit more. It kind of breathed here coming off the corner. Maybe it's just the angle. But no, you can tell from just how much of the nose of the car you see. Comes up. Okay, there we go. So at that point, yeah, maybe, just kind of still, force your nose in there. But again, it's just not going to work, though, because Stenhouse at this point, this is where I think the blame kind of shifts to the 47 here a little bit. He comes down again and then gets into the 22 and just cleans out pretty much everybody to the entire left of him there. It wasn't Stenhouse's fault for starting this. It wouldn't have been a problem if Logano hadn't shoved his nose in there in the meantime. Hold spacebar. Thank you. There we go. Yeah, that's right. The play and the pause. Okay, that's easier. I want to go back and forth, though. We'll still work with that, too. But, yeah, I think it's on both of them. I think it's on Logano for starting it, and it's on Stenhouse for finishing it. I think that's still the situation. He's coming down, and look at that. It just looked, during the live feed, it just looked like they were just going to keep knocking into each other over and over until one of them or both of them wrecked, and it just happened over and over. Realistically, could Logano have backed off? No, because, yeah, he had a ton of momentum, and I see that. Could Stenhouse could have not blocked there at the end? Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a situation where Logano was not going to back off and Stenhouse was not going to just let him go by. And yeah, they took out a good portion of the field in this wreck. So that was too bad. I think that if this particular wreck didn't happen, we probably would have still had a good number of cars to kind of settle the finish here. Who knows if the other wrecks that came afterwards would have been. The Daytona 500 lately seems to always hinge on like one particular incident. But again, let me watch this in full motion. I think that's where I got kind of a better sense of it. Yeah, Logano kind of moving low. I mean, it just everything tightens up so much. There's nowhere you can go on this. I mean, it's a bad situation. He's coming up there. This is closing. These guys are coming. They're pushing this entire line. This line wants to just force its way through. And the only thing that's really stopping it, I mean, it's kind of on Blaney too for the inside line because there's no way you can get anywhere down here. There's no escape at all. You can't go up here. Nemechek's filling this spot in the outside line. So yeah, and of course Logano can't go up anyway because here's the quarter panel of the 47 right on him. So it's just, see again, but right here I think was the decisive moment. From this point here, Stenhouse couldn't have gone up in front of the 42. If he did that, you'd have another wreck. That way, these two cars hit the wall. The outside line gets cleaned out. He probably could have kept up there a little bit. And yeah, he would have dropped some spots. Maybe Hamlin would have come down to help him. I don't know if the closing rate would have been too much to help that. There was a little bit of an escape road, but now I'm saying that, look how much these guys are staggered. Look how small this hole is here between Jones and Hamlin. You probably would have had to wreck back there. And maybe he thought, okay, if it's at least something that he's doing, that was going to be something that, he could control and it was going to turn out better for him. So yeah, he comes, oh yeah, see, it fans out, but then he kind of makes the move back to the left. I don't have the SMT data in front of me. I'm sure somebody else is, going to do an analysis on this to look at it, but that's what it looks like from the visuals there. And yeah, and really once they're starting to make contact and leaning on each other, it's just out of control, and you're just completely at the mercy of the traffic. Now you got everybody nose to tail. They're stacking into it. Blaney gets hooked. The entire inside line blows up, and everybody is just going everywhere at that point. So again, I thought it was a stupid move. I still think it was a pretty stupid move. I think that in this case here, if Logano really wanted to make some daring move here, he could have moved up in front of Nemechek. And if you want to get around the 47, try to run the high lane here. Maybe Stenhouse comes down or something like that and tries something else. But just made the move just a little too late. I mean, you can't hesitate. I mean, the closing rate and the speeds here are so high. And we saw this in the Xfinity race, how close it was between the moment where Jesse Love got in front of Sam Mayer at the bottom of the entrance to turn one, and how they pretty much made contact. Could have very easily wrecked both of them. That's almost what you have here between the 22 and the 42. And he's not getting pushed as much by Hamlin here. And Nemechek seemed to really have trouble with speed and traffic. He was hanging around in there, but he wasn't really making any moves. Certainly by here, it's too late. You're committed to this line. You're not going to be able to get out of it. And now it shifts to the 47. And yeah, the 47 has all this room. He could jump up there, and he did not do that. And once they're starting to bounce off each other, they're just going to keep doing it until they wreck. And even though the frustrating thing to me is he had a second chance, and it's so easy to say this again, but again, still, there was just a little moment there where they spread out, just coming off the flat, and the 47 was kind of in his own lane there. And yeah, you're going to drop back, but okay, that's, are you going to tear up your car or are you going to go for it? It is the Daytona 500. He's won it before. He wants to win it again. He's right up there. There's the leaders right in front of him. Yeah, I guess it's hard to really blame him. It's hard to really blame him. It's hard to blame the motivation, but if you want to blame the action, it's pretty clear that, that was, they were just leaning on each other. So you just had the wrong two people to be in that situation. And it's unfortunate because, yeah, this is where Kyle Busch got the damage. He spins to the inside there. The DVP ends up eliminating him, even though there was some controversy over that. And that ends up being the wreck there. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Is the next one the Preece one? Oh, yes, I think that's the one. Okay, let's go into this. Okay, Christopher Bell is leading the race here at the point. He's got his teammate Denny Hamlin to the inside. Bell looked all over the place down the back straightaway here. I'm sure I don't think the SMT data is viewable by the public. Good point there, Donnie. Yeah, again, the only other car that looked really nervous, there were several cars that looked very nervous at the end of this once people started shoving into each other. The first one was Corey LaJoie, that same 0-1 car that had a lot of speed. I think one reason it was so fast is it was just insanely loose. When he was in front of Stenhouse for that lengthy period of time there, the 0-1 was just jumping around. It's like, oh God, he's going to just wipe out. I thought he was going to start the accident there. And there were some that were kind of saying the same thing online. The other one was the 41 here with Custer, which I think was a part of the last accident here. He was really loose. And probably I think the common issue is whoever was leading this outside line. I think in all three of these cases, whether it was Custer, whether it was LaJoie, or whether it was Bell here, they were just insanely loose and out of control. And whoever was behind them just had so much momentum that they just couldn't handle it there. And ultimately, that's what happens. Custer gets to the back of Bell, hooks him into the outside wall, and now it's roulette time. Who's it going to be? Somebody in this outside line is going to get cleaned out here at the very least. And if that happens, it's probably going to take out everybody on the inside line behind him. But massive hit here. Oh my goodness. Bell just clobbers the outside wall here. Thank goodness for the safer barrier. Inside line's trying to scramble to get by. Clears a couple of cars here. You got Bowman. The other drivers trying to close in as much as they can to the inside line there, but there's just not enough room. We get back a few cars here. Get back a few more. Look at this. William Byron, your race winner, right here. How many times have we seen this in the history of the Daytona 500, that the car that gets so close to being in the biggest wreck or one of the biggest wrecks ends up winning the race? This happened to Davey Allison in 1992. He was right there when the big wreck happened, also on the back straightaway there, just as barely escaped and got through. You think about Dale Earnhardt in 2001, of course, what happened there on the final lap of the race. But before that, when the big one happened, that he avoided any impact there and was able to still be part of the battle there for the lead at the end of that one. I think Matt Kenseth had this happen before. I'm trying to think of a specific example, but those two definitely stand out. And this is definitely another one here. So he misses this car, but right behind William Byron is Ryan Preece. And this is where things get messy. Oh my goodness. Just picks him entirely out of the crowd. Byron just escapes here. Eric Jones is on the inside. He's in the second worst spot in this incident here, because now he's going to get ridden down to the inside. Jones had a great car in the duels, looked absolutely determined to pull off a win here, had some good battles up there too. Ward Burton in 02. Oh, was he in the big one there also? I'd have to look at that too. But yeah. So again, Preece gets hyped up on off the side of the 20 car here. Crazy deal. And when you see a car ramped up like this, you start thinking about like Jeff Bodine's accident in the Truck Series in 2000, ramping up off the side of a car here. You don't know what's going to be happening here at that time. But here, what was very interesting, oh my goodness, just how high the car went. And from this angle, and Jeff Gluck pointed this out on Twitter, and I'm sure he's talking about it on the teardown too, it looked like he was kind of seesawing on the 43 here. But the view up the backstretch, I don't know if it's in this clip here, probably is. It's a minute long here. He was still separate, and he's just riding on the rear wheels here with it up in the air. Now, of course, we have not just the diffuser. Again, thanks to the folks here for kind of clarifying that. But the under tray, the entire underneath of the car, the smooth deal here is keeping this car up in the air. And I'm not going to pretend to understand the aerodynamics of all of this. But it's probably a reason it stayed on its rear wheels this long at this point. Certainly at the end of the straightaway, it looks like it's starting to kind of come back down. But the problem is, and they started to kind of show this in the other replays, as it comes down, it's hooking to the left. And when it hooks to the left, it exposes that right side of the car. And now we have very much the same situation we saw at Corey LaJoie at Michigan last year when he got flipped. He had that really surprising flip that happened down the back straightaway. Now you're up in the air. When I saw it from this angle, I thought it was the banking. I thought maybe the banking had lifted maybe the left rear tire and kind of swerved the car that direction. But it looks like it happened before that because he's still on the flat here at this point. But my goodness, it just takes the car and it's upside down and it's on from there. And just a massive, massive hit there into the outside wall, almost into the catch fence with the rear of the car, honestly, when it flies up the banking here. Very scary incident out there. Thank goodness the safer barrier for one thing. Also, I'm so glad this rear of the car was re-examined. I'm sure in this case this was a very hard hit here for Preece. I hope, again, I'm glad we saw him get out of the car. We saw him interviewed. He was certainly a bit shaken from it, and I certainly don't blame him. But seeing that there's not a lot of deformation in the rear of this car, and again, they build these cars really well. I'm not saying anything about that, but the design that NASCAR puts in these cars, one of the biggest concerns we had in 2022 was how stiff the rear of this car is. And, luckily we saw even at short tracks that it would deform a lot. The fact we don't really see that as much here, that's a little concerning, because that tells me that a lot of that was absorbed by the driver in that case. And then landing flat on the pavement here, one of the wheels gone, just an absolutely brutal hit. But thankfully, again, the roll cage stays up. Preece gets out of the car. Very much, reminiscent to the flip he had on the grass. Seeing this in this particular case here, where the grass really wasn't a factor in this. In fact, it happened in an area that would have had grass. I mean, it probably would have been a more serious flip in terms of the number of barrel rolls or whatever in this case. Thankfully, it wasn't that situation here. But my goodness, just a really rough situation here. Where's the onboards here? Same thing. Oh, okay. Guess we don't have to replay. I was hoping to have the replay up the backstretch. I'm sure somebody will post that there. If they haven't already, these things get up there pretty quick. But kudos to them for having the other angle there to show that, because it looks like, Jones still did get some significant damage from this. It pretty much ended Larson's day here too. And Bubba Wallace got some nose damage behind Larson, which kind of messed up his run there too. But yeah, just it's so bizarre. It almost looks like it's going to land back on all four. It ramps up real high, and it just, again, we talked about this. Actually, the more I think about it, what this reminds me of, and it probably reminds other of you as well, the Justin Haley incident that we saw over at the Clash a couple weeks ago. Low speed incident, was an intentional thing too. And, Haley was responding to another driver, drove into the side of it, or let's see, hang on. Am I speaking out of turn here? Was it Haley, or was it, it was somebody that had knocked into another car there. There were a couple of cars that were knocked. One was ramped up, or was it Gibbs? Whoever it was, the situation was where you had two different cars that run into each other, and it ramped up one over the other, and it landed back down. And there was a lot of wondering, like, okay, how on earth did that happen? And people were just kind of laughing about it. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's the madhouse and it's a short track, and everybody's like, okay, it's not a big deal. But is there an issue with this car where a wheel ramps up onto another one here? One thing that really stood out to me in doing 500 days, especially the first couple of episodes, is covering the truck series and the Jeff Bodine accident. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier here, there was that situation where one of the things that made that accident so devastating was that Jeff Bodine ramped up the back of another truck, and once it caught air, it guided its way into the fence, ripped down the fence. It was a serious accident there. One of the big things they changed, I know that the first description of it was that they were going to use, okay, we're going to put restrictor plates on it and slow the trucks down, and that's it. That wasn't it. What they actually did was they actually reinforced the rear of the truck, the point at which Bodine actually ramped up over the truck, and stiffened that, because what happened is it crushed and it deformed, and it was tire to tire. And of course, this tire is going forward, this tire is going forward, and it's like a couple of gears. And of course, they're rubber, and they're hot, and they stick together, even if it's just for an instant. And it just jerks the car right up in the air, and it flicked it right up there. So what they had to do is they had to shore up the strength of the right side of the truck so that it wouldn't deform and expose that tire. And of course, anybody that watches open wheel racing, that that's always been a hazard there. But when you have a stock car and the fender gets crushed in that much, and the suspension is exposed and the tire is out there, you can have a situation like this. I hope that when they look at this, maybe they'll look back at the Bowman Gray incident and this one here a bit more, and really sum that up, because I think that's what happened here, especially for how it ramped up so quickly. You still have the tire here on the car at this point. And it just, we saw the heavy damage to the right front of Jones's car. There was, there must have been some contact here, or the contact from just obliterating the right front here off of Christopher Bell's car. Whatever it was, if it was both or just one of them, I think that's what happened here. And it just happened at such a higher speed that it ended up being really serious. And thankfully, thank God, it wasn't any more serious than it was, because this could have happened, if this was at the catch fence, if this was, at a different spot on the track, if it happened in the high lane or something, that could be an issue. And maybe it's been an issue this entire time with this particular car. So this is something that needs to be looked at. And maybe that's where the next step is going to be, is reinforcing that area around the tires, above the tires, much like they had in the truck series. Again, there's a lot that could be learned from the past. You have a new car, maybe you don't design it with the exact same things at play here. And that's the way it kind of looked like it too. It could just be an entirely unique accident, but it is reminiscent enough of a very, very low speed incident that we saw that I think that's worth analysis. I think that needs to be looked at. But again, and then separate from that is the ongoing controversy over the smooth flat bottom of this car. I think when this car turns sideways, it's going to flip. It's going to flip no matter what track it is. If you're going to have a flip at Michigan, which we haven't had in years, and now suddenly we have it with this Cup car there, and then you're definitely going to have it on these super speedways if a car gets in this situation. Joey Logano himself, or I guess that was the old car, but other drivers have had this situation before, and some of them happening at tracks that you wouldn't expect, and that needs to be looked at. So I think that's another part of that. But, oh my goodness, look at that impact there by the rear of the car, and then to land on the ground again. It just actually bounces off the pavement there. Just a brutal, brutal accident, and so glad to see Preece out of that. But there's a lot that needs to be looked at. It's not just the under tray and all that, and the diffuser and everything else under there. It's the tire-to-tire contact. And even though it's a low-profile tire, maybe it's more, I don't know if it's more or less dangerous by having a larger rim there and a lower profile there of the tires, but it's still rubber against rubber, and I think that's I think it's what happened here. But hopefully we'll see if there's anything more on that. So we'll get into the okay, we got the full highlights have been posted here since we started on this. We'll get into the incident there at the very end of the race. Let's see. It's such a light green flag. It looks like the white flag there on that. But okay. I guess we can go through the finish of this here too. Denny Hamlin and Austin Cindric. Cindric had such a fine run out there. I think he's already established himself really from 2021 as being one of the best super speedway drivers, especially at Daytona, that we've had in a number of years. And it's an embarrassment of riches because he's already driving for Penske, which themselves have been so good here with Logano and Blaney and Keselowski before Cindric here at the same time too. They've always been so good at both of these tracks here. And now Cindric comes into that situation with his own experience. Yes, is a great road racer as well. But we saw in 2021, there was that big wreck that happened. He drove that open car for Penske. He was right up there the entire night and ended up getting in that big accident at the end there when McDowell won the race. But regardless, had a fine race out there. Won the race the next year, was right up there last year when the big incident happened at the end that froze the field there with Byron winning. And again, in this one, was right up there mixing it up with Blaney. A bit of a power struggle between the two. Blaney's kind of been more in that position since Keselowski left, of being like really that kind of big guy to have, more of these great runs at Daytona. Led 118 laps in 2018, should have won it in his first race for Penske, still hasn't won it, came out the other end of this one with a decent finish somehow, despite some pretty heavy damage in one of those incidents. But regardless, looking at the finish here, but a decent battle between these two all day. They were easily the class of the field. Look, it's something to say when Logano is trying to catch up to him. Obviously, he had the electrical issue earlier and trying to cycle his way back up there. But still, the 2 and the 12 were fantastic. And Denny Hamlin was one of the few that seemed to really capable of actually doing something with them there at the end of it. And I have to say as well, the Haas factory team, much like we saw with Sam Mayer in Saturday's race, great job by Custer. I still think this is kind of the put up or shut up year for Custer in the Cup Series this year. I know that Haas is committed to him and building this team around him from what's left of the Stewart-Haas Cup effort there and keeping that charter. But this is a fine start between Mayer's run and the Xfinity race and this. We already have Riley Herbst getting knocked out of line here. Great save by him, by the way, in the 35. Fine job out there, keeping that thing under control. And good of NASCAR not throwing the caution. Again, that's exactly the kind of situation there where it doesn't warrant one. I wonder if Alex Bowman in this moment anticipated a caution was going to come out, because he kind of drops back. Same here with Custer as well. And now that puts Hamlin in a situation here with Cindric, where it's going to be a pretty good battle between the two of them. Hamlin himself, I was surprised he was still going to be that much of a contender at the end of this race. After the spin he had earlier in the race and seeing how easily the under tray is damaged and how dependent these cars are on the aerodynamics underneath, I was like, okay, he spun out. There's no way he's going to be a factor. I was glad. I'm happy to see him back up there because it's like, okay, good. I'm glad that's not a death sentence for one of these drivers out there that they can't get back up there. So I think that's another one to look at the same time. But hey, coming off the corner, Corey LaJoie still leading the inside line there with Nemechek. You got Custer up here with what's that, Briscoe behind him. And then all of a sudden it fans out. And it looks like it's going to be a photo finish here between the two of them. And everybody's just going to be just pushing as hard as they can. But Custer makes this aggressive move to the outside. It's his only play to try to win it. Totally get it, trying to go for it. But what I don't entirely get is what was going on down here when he was cutting down to the left and getting into it. I don't know if he got tipped or if he was just throwing a block on somebody behind him here. But then everything just goes haywire here. LaJoie spins out, and it is just on from there. And you got You got Hamlin hooking to the right. That takes care of not quite Byron. Byron just kind of jumps. He was just in exactly the right place, the right time. Missed not one, but two big accidents. That should be really the headline here for his summary here of winning this race today. He's just as close here in this case. Reddick doesn't escape unscathed either, but Hamlin's coming up. That 24 just shoots by there. He gets into the left rear of the 45. And that was just enough to kind of really let Byron get away. You got Nemechek, you got Briscoe kind of coming through here. Cody Ware, heartbreaking here. After getting the fourth place run last August there in the 400 mile race, he's right here in exactly the spot to capitalize on this. Maybe get another top five here, not win the race. Again, he's third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, potentially, if the whole outside line gets cleaned out. He comes through here. He's just about in the right spot, but then all of a sudden it's like Ty Gibbs' car comes down on him, and then, oh my goodness, just hooks him dead right back into Hamlin, and just a massive, massive hit. I haven't heard more on Ware. It didn't seem like the broadcast was too concerned, so I'm hopeful that means everything's cool on that end too, but just a massive hit here. Bringing him into the outside wall there too. And a few cars that are able to scatter. Cindric went down to the apron. Pretty much every driver on the apron, they're losing spots to the guys on the banking. Nemechek gets through. Here's Bowman back here. Just a mess. Hopefully we get the replay on here. It looks like this just has the finish. But we'll pull up the full race replay. I want to see the other, what was going on here with the 41 at the end and kind of sum that up. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Okay, that's the finish. Do they have the replay of the finish? It's just the donuts on this. Oh, my goodness. They should have... Okay, no, that's the earlier one. Okay. What I need to see... see if I can find it here. 2024, Daytona, or 2025. Gotta get used to the year. Daytona. 500 finish. Let's see. Okay, maybe the Fox highlights have it. Let's see. They should have some replay of that. No, I think this is the same one. Weather delay. Okay, cool. We got fan footage from this too. I don't know what we're seeing here on this too. I'll go ahead and pull up. Let me just see what we can discern. You can't really discern too much from that initial replay, I gotta say, because it happened so quick. But something happened where it looked like the 41 gets to the outside, and then something happened on his left rear quarter. He's coming down here for some reason, and once he does that, he's like trying to block this lane, and then it hooks him into it, and it's just on from there. That's more or less what happened. I don't know if he came down or the other guy came up. That's what I want to try to kind of establish here. If somebody else has a good angle of that, I think they showed another one in the post race, but maybe in the Victory Lane interview they'll have that. Let's see. Let's go back a couple more. Highlights, extended highlights, post race reaction. Oh, maybe here. Maybe we got this. They probably play it over the interview. Nope. 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 Okay. Nope. They're not going to do that. Well, I don't want to dwell on that too long there. But there was definitely, yeah, I mean, that one's a bit more cleared up there. But really, I mean, where does all this come out in the wash? I'm glad these are good moments here that we had, that it was actually pretty competitive out there. 19 went to the middle of Denny and slammed him. They showed it from the copter cam. That's the angle I'm trying to find. Yeah, because I know they showed that, but that makes sense. So yeah, it was just an unfortunate deal there where you just got people going for it, and that was kind of a situation. Did the 3 get caught up in the last wreck? I don't know if he did. Did he? It's so hard to tell. Even in like the high def replay here, they just don't seem to want to show anything else. I'm going back to the second screen here. Let's look. I saw LaJoy spin here. He just kind of jumps right out of line there, and let's see. So there's Bowman. Bowman, yeah, pretty much. There's like a few cars on the outside. Byron gets through. Bowman gets changed up. Here's Haley. Okay, there's Dylan. So let's see what happens with Dylan. He slows down pretty good. I don't think he's in it. Oh, no, hang on. Nope, he's in it. Okay. Nope. Ooh, hard to tell. Haley comes right up in front of him. Haley comes right up in front of Austin Dillon there at the end. Speaking of which, Ty Dillon, I was so glad to see, what a great run that Ty Dillon was having. And this didn't get reported at all by the Fox broadcast, which is too bad. But he had a 4-tire stop right after a restart. Must have had a loose wheel or something. I don't know what was said over the radio there, but something forced him to pit road for 4 tires, and he came back out. He lost a lap, and then he lost a second lap before the next caution came out, and that pretty much took him out of contention. I don't know where he ended up. Probably with all these wrecks, he ended up with a decent finish. Where did he end up? Let's go back to the main screen here, and I'll pull that up. Byron, your winner. Tyler Reddick in second. All this unofficial. Excuse me. Tyler Reddick in second. Jimmy Johnson in third. Haven't even talked about that. Again, I mean, I know that a lot had to happen for Johnson to get back up there in the third spot there, but incredible. Hasn't had a better finish than 27th since he became a part owner here of the Legacy Motor Club. But getting this top 5 finish out of there, I mean, it was great seeing his interview there where he says he feels it's so different as a team owner in this case. Really cool deal there. For him there in the 84 team. And again, I think what better measure do you need of how much more this team has improved? I don't know what they did over this last offseason. All we heard was, Jimmy buying up Maury Gallagher's interest in it. And now he's, the majority owner of this team here. But whatever he did, it's worked out great. And never more than for his team to lock itself in on speed, and then show decent speed in this race where he was right in the main pack. I know last year we didn't really get a chance to see what he could do in that car because he got in the wreck on lap 5, got some damage, and then dropped back. Didn't see as much even before that, where he got in another wreck in that race. But then in this one here, just seemed to do everything right and found his way up there. He was about 6th or 7th for most of the last run there, and then got back up there into the top 5. So great for him. Chase Briscoe, the pole sitter, in 4th. John Hunter Nemechek in 5th. Again, very high on that driver there too. And kudos to the team out there. 2 Legacy Motor Club cars in the top 5. I'm not sure if anybody predicted that at all. Alex Bowman there in the 6th spot in a backup car after starting at the back of the field there. Ran last briefly in this race, if I remember correctly. Blaney with the nose damage from that one wreck, showing in the 7th spot there ahead of Cindric. Again, Cindric was running way better than that showed. Is this laps led here? Yeah, looking at 23 laps led for Blaney, 59 for Cindric. Great clinic again for the Penske team after the championship last year. I mean, they're looking just as strong as ever to keep that championship streak going. And it's definitely going to be a good start on that. Justin Allgaier in the JR Motorsports car comes out the other end in the 9th spot. Dale Jr. must be, if he wasn't on cloud 9 already, from having his car in this race, from coming back from a poor qualifying run to race the team into the show, and then to survive all this, what was going on here, to finish in the 9th spot there. A great weekend. He's got to be absolutely beside himself, so it's good to see a lot of veterans in this sport coming out of this really happy, understandably, as I would assume, certainly Junior, certainly Jimmy Johnson, in this case here. Wasn't the same day we saw for Truex, of course, mentioning him earlier there, dropping out early in the race. Eric Jones in the 12th spot there for the Legacy Motor Club team, unofficially, again, pending the results of this. I'm looking at the NASCAR.com lineup here. We'll see if the official results come out since then to look at what else was here. And then, yes, Ty Dillon in the 14th spot did get back on the lead lap, 11 seconds back of the leader. Yeah, still a great run. I think the Legacy Motor Club Redemption Tour, the Ty Dillon Redemption Tour, hey, the ascendancy of JR Motorsports and Cup may end up being 3 of the stories we end up following this year. I think that's exciting. That on top of Chase Elliott, 15th in this race. He was threatening all day. He didn't really take control of this race at any point. He led 2 laps, but still, 15th place finish, winning the Clash. Fan favorite driver is going to be looking good this year. And obviously with Hendrick winning the 500 again, they've certainly got no reason to doubt themselves now. Looking further back in the lineup here, Chris Buescher rounds out the top 10. Buescher was my pick in this race last year. I really expected him to kind of be up there in that race. Didn't really happen. But this time around, I mean, the Roush Fenway Keselowski deal, unfortunately, Keselowski got in one of those incidents too, didn't he? Because he was in a backup car. And yes, he was a lap down in 26th. And then, of course, we're seeing the Ryan Preece incident there. I was hoping, I know last year's race, it seemed like Keselowski was really able to kind of work his way through the field. Didn't see as much of him in this race here, and certainly not after the incident there as well. But again, a fine run out of Buescher there as well. Buescher, I think, he's in my championship 4. I think he should easily be making that, given how strong he was at the end of last year. And I think despite the chaos of this, it's so hard to gauge, if this is going to be a good indicator, especially for the downforce races coming up. But I think it's a very promising start here, to at least come out with something on this. The Spire Motorsports team, they were lagging back at the beginning. They've taken a very conservative approach. I made the comparison to Dale Jarrett in 2001, back when we did the Thursday stream here. And I think it was very appropriate because we had kind of a similar situation with the 7, the 71, and the 77 here. We had 2 of those cars not even practice. They went out in qualifying. They were kind of mid-pack thereabouts, had some decent runs in the dual races. And then the Cup race, they went right back to being conservative. They were, Hocevar was last for most of the run until Allmendinger dropped out. That was kind of really the situation there at the same time. Regardless, McDowell came up there in the right time and finished 11th for the best of that particular team. Haley back in 19th in his backup car. Kyle Larson in 20th on the lead lap, despite the nose damage. Cliff Daniels and the crew doing another great effort there to get him back up. Stenhouse 18th without the left front fender after the incident there with Logano. Looking further back, Cole Custer after his incident there, shown in the 21st spot. LaJoie in 22nd. Not an indication at all for how both those drivers were running, especially at the last laps of this race. Austin Dillon shown in 23rd. Hamlin classified last on the lead lap in 24th. 85 seconds back of the leader. Must have somehow been able to keep going there at the end. But regardless, that's where the scoring is so far showing him. This, again, all unofficial here at the moment. Cody Ware involved in that accident, didn't complete the final lap, ends up in 25th, ahead of Keselowski. Gilliland, Gregson, Bubba Wallace, and Hocevar rounds out the top 30 there. And then from there, you got your bottom 5 finishers not far behind. A.J. Allmendinger, again, your last place finisher. The 11th last place finish of his career and his first DNF in the Daytona 500. Big thanks to those of you that were bringing this up during the race broadcast there as well. He does have a pair of DNFs actually in the summer race, including a last place run in 2014, which is the same year he won his first Cup race at Watkins Glen. This back with the JTG Daugherty team, now, of course, the Hayek Motorsports effort. there for the number 47. But Allmendinger, pretty straightforward story there for the last car article this week. Although there were a lot of changes for last place at the beginning of the race because there were so many different drivers that were taking fuel at different times on either side of the rain delay there as well. But AJ back out there, just had an engine problem coming off of turn 4. He was running about 22nd coming off the corner. Again, big thanks to the max.com site there with the onboard cameras. Absolutely tremendous. I think that's one of the best improvements that have come up this year. It's not the only one. We got to get into the Xfinity broadcast here too. So I appreciate you guys sticking around with me here. I know we got 160 viewers here. Thank you so much for still tuning in. We're going to talk about that because I have a lot of positives to talk about here, especially for how much I've griped about broadcasts in the past and present, and will certainly in the future in other cases here too. But AJ ends up your last place finish here. First time the 16s finished last in a Cup Series race at Daytona in the 500. In the 400, Greg Biffle was last in the 2008 race back in the old 3M Ford Fusion back then. But AJ ends up your last place feature. So pending the results of post-race inspection, which we are still waiting for, that is going to be the story here at the same time there too. So again, unfortunate deal for him. But again, that's sometimes a situation here on the circuit. So we'll find out how things are going to be going. Got Atlanta coming up next week for the Cup Series. I believe Xfinity and Truck. So we'll see what's happening there. But before we get into any of that, we definitely need to get into, let's just jump right into it, into the Xfinity and the Truck Series. I guess we can talk about ARCA a bit. I didn't really do any coverage there of the back of the field, but I know that there was some contention for that, certainly with the early exits in that one. Other things on, well, I guess we can clean up again on the Cup Series race here too. The rain delays, Bill France weather, I guess is just not a thing anymore, which is unfortunate. But still having, I'm glad they still got the race in today. The weather forecast didn't look promising all week. There was this band of showers, and it seemed to be more and more aggressive this entire week. It was just kind of stacking up and ended up coming through there. And then ultimately, I think threw a wrench in the plans for a lot of these teams. I don't know if they even, I wonder how many of these teams actually do plan on there being a rain delay at these races. Maybe they're used to it. Maybe by this point, for how often it happens, it's not a big deal. But it certainly seemed like it could have been to at least some of the programs out there. But regardless, it was, I think as to the weather, there was some discussion about okay, why even bother trying to start the race? It's a difficult situation. And I think there were a couple that were talking about this and I like they were bringing up that it was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If they waited, you got the crowd just standing there, nothing's happening, there's no rain or anything, and they're just wondering why they're waiting. And then all of a sudden it starts raining and then they have to go indoors versus getting a few laps in, and especially with the events of the day, having the president there to be able to watch the race, you certainly want to at least get a start in. I know there were a lot of people comparing to the 2020 race, and I certainly understand that from that, but it was good that they started the race in that case too. At least be able to, see what's going on there and take full advantage of that. Again, I think if you have a, something like that your sport could do. If you're able to race out there, if it's raining currently, obviously don't send the cars back out there. But if it's at all possible to get the cars on the track there, I don't think anybody's going to be faulting them for it. Even if it is 11 laps or 20 laps or something like that, that's still something. And then again, you could have. I'm just glad it wasn't a situation where it changed the outcome for any of the other drivers. We didn't have anybody drop out. It almost was a situation for Carson Hocevar, though. Mentioning the Spire Motorsports team earlier, 77 team had a fuel pressure issue right at the start, lost the draft, were in position to perhaps get the third straight last place finish for the number 77 at Spire. It was Ty Dillon a couple years ago. It was Hocevar last year in the lap 5 or 6 accident. And in this case, it could have been Hocevar again in this. And he would have been, I believe, the first back-to-back last-place finisher in the history of the Daytona 500. There have been, cases of other drivers finishing last in the 500 more than once, but a different situation there too. But yeah, I think that I think that if you can race and you can do it, no matter how short it is. I mean, if the storm is already there, if it's imminent, that's about the only situation I think where it's going to be unsafe for the fans to be in the stands. I think it's the only situation where you would delay it preemptively. But kudos to them for moving the start time up. NASCAR seems really eager to do that these days. And especially with this one where, yeah, they had even more bits and pieces to work with the president arriving. I'm sure that was no small task to even move it just that hour. But as it turned out, that was critical. I hate it at the same time for the fans that didn't get into the stands there for the start of the race there. Obviously, when you have a dignitary like that show up, you're going to have, there's never going to be more intense scrutiny than when you have the president show up to a race. So obviously that was a difficult case. And you got fans that are out there that I'm sure gave themselves plenty of time to get there that were still stranded outside. So I hate that, especially somebody that, really follows the start of the race here in particular. And this being the 500, that's a rough deal. I don't know how much can be done to make that easier because, again, sometimes this will happen. And to sound like this particular deal came together kind of late in this too, so maybe people couldn't adjust their preparations for it. And there's really not a clear and fast rule, how much time you give, so that's always a rough deal. I don't think that's great. I mean, it's not something that happens every year. I've never been to Daytona, so I mean, I'm thinking about covering this next year. I've given some serious thought to that, but I think that would be a pretty cool deal there too. But again, there was a lot of moving parts there, and unfortunately, things don't move very quickly there in that sense there. So again, I hate it for the fans. I know Gluck was doing something about talking with other people that were kind of waiting in line there too, I guess thankfully, again, you had the rain delay come when it did, as early as it did, and then, pretty much everybody, I don't know if there were any lines by the time the delay happened. You had several hours at that point. Again, it's not always going to work out perfectly there, but you try to just get it as well as you can too. And also, again, I don't think that this should be something that should be looked at negatively to having a dignitary at the track too. I think that that's a huge get. We saw this back at the Super Bowl a couple of weeks ago, and having that out there, and whoever the president is too. I don't want to get too much down that road here, but I'm concerned that people are viewing this too negatively, just for having a dignitary out there for an event. I mean, I remember when George W. Bush came to the 500 in, 2004? I mean, I didn't agree with him politically, but it's like, okay, well, hey, he's there. So, that's a pretty cool deal. But it would have been even better if more people got the chance to see that without, having to be stuck out there in line. But the weather was always the factor. I don't know if anything could be done with that. I know I talked about a covered racetrack on the 500 days deal and all that. And I don't know where technologically we've advanced so far in the Air Titans and everything so forth with trying to get a race in even when there's a lot of rain in the area. But I think that's another part to look at too. So, but again, I think all in all, I mean, getting the race in today, getting all, 500 miles in today, even with the delay and so forth, again, and a solid race. I just wish it wasn't so much equipment getting torn up. And I am a bit conflicted on that a bit. But yes, I mean, the way that, looking at these replays, I feel better watching these replays now because I could see where there was some strategy, where there were drivers actually trying to make moves and trying to kind of, work something out. You had some great storylines of drivers actually trying to get good finishes, and indeed drivers that did get good finishes. And William Byron dodging the two biggest wrecks really of the entire night, which is really remarkable. I mean, I hope I'm not watching the post race now, of course, but I hope that's getting played up a lot more. That's great. That's great. So, again, I said after the Clash, I feel very positive coming into the season. Yes, we had that hiccup there in the duels, with that. But again, I think this year's Cup Series season, again, I wouldn't say it's my favorite 500, but it's certainly not at the bottom of the list. It's certainly not. I think there were a lot of positives there. The broadcast, I think, still could have been better on this end. I think the camera work in particular was a bit nauseating. I felt like it was really hard to tell what the hell was going on. I'm so glad I was able to kind of pull some clips up here, because I thought about the prospect of just kind of breaking this down mentally. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do that. I need to actually see what was happening, whether it's showing replays, whether it's just switching between these camera angles, zooming in too close. It was so tricky to have that, but that's something else needs to be looked at. I was just looking at the comment here. Tom W. They had 5 gates open. They only showed one gate, the one closest to I-95. Okay, I'm glad they had something else that made it work on that. But okay, great. I mean, I don't know. It could be. I remember going to the last A's game. They had the situation where they were giving out like a souvenir after the game was over, and they chose like 3 different spots, and the first spot closest to the exit was the busiest, and the other 2 there was like no line at all. So maybe it was a situation like that. And so people went to those other exits that went in there. Again, I've never been to Daytona. I don't know. But I'm encouraged to see that. Hopefully that was a case where it wasn't too rough there too. But Jeff Gordon said Logano did, Donnie Hodgkins. Oh my goodness. I think the Logano incident is probably the most controversial one in there. It feels a little Ernie Irvin in the way it played out. But again, I think it shifted a bit to Stenhouse at the tail end of it. I don't think Stenhouse started it, but I think Logano started it, but I think Stenhouse finished it. And you just had, it just had a really unfortunate mess. But yeah, I mean, hey, we're talking about it. It was certainly not boring. So, that was cool. I just love seeing like a battle to the finish. I'm glad we had to finish under green, even if it was just 2 cars that were left over at the end, kind of Talladega Nights style almost. I think that, and for what it's worth, I mean, there were some quirks with the broadcast. Again, I think the camera, I had much more of an issue with the camera work than the actual play-by-play here, because Mike Joy is, I think, still so solid at that. And Clint Boyer, as much as I'm not a fan of Boyer, I can kind of tune him out because Kevin Harvick kind of says the same thing he says, but a little bit easier to understand. So that's fine. I could just kind of roll with that. I think that's kind of more my thoughts on that. The Xfinity race, and I have some notes on this that I want to consult on that. Where is it on here? Nope, not that note. Let's see. Yeah. Oh goodness. Yeah, I got those on those too. Excellent. The Xfinity race. Before we even get into the race itself, how great was that CW broadcast? How great was that? I mean, my goodness. Somebody mentioned this. I think it was Marshall Pruitt. I believe it was. Somebody on Twitter mentioned this. I can't take credit for it, but said that this broadcast felt so, for the first time in a long time, it felt current. And I completely agree. I think that's probably the best way to kind of describe exactly what it improved there. The job that Parker Kligerman and Jamie McMurray did in the booth there was really, really good. It was almost too much the other direction. If I have any complaints about that, it was just like the speed at which they were providing information. They were so enthusiastic and they had so much to say about like every moment there. It needed to almost kind of be broken up a bit. But I don't think that's a problem in their end. The more I've thought about that, the more I think that means that's where the play-by-play guy needs to assert their role. And this is, again, the same problem I've had with Adam Alexander. It's not, he's a good host, but he's such a good host. What do you have to be a good host? You have to just kind of not be too stressed. You got to kind of just lay back. You got to kind of just, let things happen and let people, be who they are and kind of show what's happening with that. That's not what a play-by-play guy needs to do. A play-by-play guy needs to get in there. You need to kind of break all that up. Think about what Bob Jenkins did. And again, you have to talk about the past here. I'm going to do it. Kind of having, these personalities where Ned Jarrett was like, so, like detail focused and was a great pit reporter and had that great radio experience kind of building up there. And then also you had, Benny Parsons with that excitement, just constantly, shouting in the booth there when something exciting happened. You needed to have like a really good play-by-play guy in there to get in there and understand, like, there's, you don't need to wait for your cue. You need to jump in there and just start doing it. And that's what Bob Jenkins did so well. And others of the greats too, past and present. Same thing with Alan Bestwick. Same thing with Mike Joy. They will just do that and be allowed to do that in those moments and really make that so much more. I think this was never more clear than the finish of the Xfinity race itself. That last lap before the caution happens, Adam Alexander doesn't say anything. And it's not like done purposefully. It's that Jamie McMurray and Parker Kligerman are doing their own play-by-play. They're doing it. They're carrying it the entire time. And there's moments in there that, yeah, I mean, Adam could have added something to it and really kind of jumped into it, but just really didn't do it. And that was kind of interesting. If you listen to the video of that, that's really what came across there. So that was really interesting. And I think that's the problem. That's the one thing that needs to be tuned up. And I'm going to still chalk it up to direction. He needs to do whatever the other two are doing. That's what he needs to do. He can't keep doing what he's always been doing. He needs to do what they're doing, because what they almost could have had him not there at all. Honestly, they could have just had Parker Kligerman and Jamie McMurray there in the booth. I think they would have been fine. I think they were that good. I don't think I'm overstating that. I really don't. People are giving Adam credit for that, for kind of being there and like, okay, yeah, he had some things to say, like, okay, when he would break down the rules of the moment of caution and stuff at the end. But, that's really, I think it works so well. I really enjoyed it. They sounded like they wanted to be there. They weren't thinking about what they were going to do after. They weren't waiting for a caution to come out. Everything was exciting. It was a pit stop. If it was a move that somebody made, one of them had like kind of a Wally Dallenbach reaction. It was like, oh, I hear that. It pulls your attention to it. And then they actually say what they were reacting to, and they brought it out there. My thought coming into this, and I think I mentioned this back a couple of shows ago, was that we were going to get kind of a dynamic where McMurray was going to be more the reserved one, kind of the Ned Jarrett type, being very methodical, and then Parker Kligerman was going to be the Benny Parsons one and kind of be the louder one that would kind of drown out McMurray a bit, but very much the opposite. I mean, not the opposite. It was really the case where they were very similar, but their voices are so different that we didn't have the same issue that we have at NBC, where we had Jeff Burton and Steve Letarte sounding the same and shouting over each other. In this case here, it sounded like they were actually having a discussion there, right? They weren't just repeating each other. They were kind of building on things, and both would notice different things. They'd be like, oh yeah, this. And I could see, and this is probably why Adam Alexander wasn't as big of a part of that broadcast as it turned out, because like it kind of felt like, you remember the cartoon Rugrats? And you had Phil and Lil, and they're like, they had Angelica trying to break them up and stuff like that. And they're like, they're brother and sister, and like they're trying to like, oh God, what was the episode? It's like they're trying to throw the ball like between three people and then just end up just throwing the ball back and forth to each other. That's kind of what happened here. Like, long tangent, but that was kind of the situation. You had a deal there where these two just had, I think they had great chemistry. McMurray, it's long overdue for him to be in the booth. I really expected him to be brought up to the Fox booth here instead of Boyer or Harvick. I thought he was going to be in that position, and because I thought he was phenomenal. He did some of that stuff in the Xfinity thing, and just him by himself elevated the Xfinity broadcast. And Kligerman, already being a great pit reporter, and again, almost like maybe more than Ned Jarrett than the Benny Parsons in the equation here. I thought he was great. I thought he did a great job. And I was very happy with it. Yeah, I think the two of them could have carried the whole thing. And, but I still think that there needs to be a play-by-play guy, because that's why I think it became a bit overwhelming sometimes for the two of them there, because you didn't have a play-by-play guy to break those things up a little bit. And it has to be play-by-play that actually is not just expressing the obvious, but actually kind of engaging in it and really being good. And Alan Bestwick in that equation, it would have been so good. It would have been phenomenal. You need somebody of that caliber. And there's a lot of them in the wings oh gosh, I need the guy's name. The guy that did the ARCA race last year in Iowa. Get him in that mix. Oh man, you got magic there. I think that would be great. Somebody that's here. A lot of guys in, after my video I put up on Friday, a lot of guys out there in the sim racing community posting their videos out there. I hope more people do that, because I think a lot of them could do it too. I don't watch a lot of that, so I don't know a lot of their names, but I know a lot of you guys I'm sure do. But again, somebody like that in there that can really take control of it and just tie it all together. You got a lot of good parts here. And I'm just talking about the booth. We haven't even got into the graphics and the music and the tone of it. Oh God, it was so good. Oh, it was so good. I know there's people that are complaining about the quality of the video, which was off. And I didn't notice that really until people mentioned it. The video quality was a bit down. That could be fixed. Again, whether they need to upgrade their cameras or just some cables or whatever, that should be fixed, because it did look better tonight in the Cup race than it did in the Xfinity race. So they're a bit trailing in that. And there were some people that said there were some issues with the audio, whether the music was a bit loud. Again, these are very easy things to fix. Very easy. And I think the CW will fix them through this year. But it's good that people are bringing them up. So hopefully they do know to fix them. But a lot of the other things, oh man, it's so good. So where do we even start? Let's start with the starting grid. A starting grid that showed every single car in the field, was a side-by-side thing at the bottom of the screen. I love the bottom of the screen thing with that, showing the driver's full name. Didn't have to show the picture. That's okay. Show the pictures along the way in the pit stop deal. That was totally fine. But I mean, a great deal. And every single paint scheme. And I hope that they keep doing that. I hope that stays, because every week these teams, especially in the Xfinity series, have different paint schemes. You have different drivers. You got guys that are part-time. You got guys that are full-time. And it's going to be a different deal every week. And you really need to stay on top of it. And I'm going to be really watching to make sure they do that. They don't just stick with the Daytona graphics and use them the rest of the year. It's like, no, keep that updated. And I hope that they will. That was phenomenal. And it really, and by doing the starting grid that way, where it showed about 5 rows of the cars on there, I thought that was really, really good, because then it allowed the commentators to talk about those drivers rather than just have the whole field, or the vertical version on NBC, or, the cartoon starting grids with 2 people at a time and just saying very little about the drivers. That was so good. I really, really enjoyed that. And I thought that was really good. And the arrangement of the graphics on the bottom, I hadn't really thought of that, but I mean, I know there's classic Formula One broadcasts that did that back in Sir Murray Walker's time and James Hunt and those guys, where they have the graphics at the bottom. That was a really, really good choice. I know a lot of people have been anxious about the ticker coming back, like the old Fox ones, but I'm kind of okay with us not having the ticker. I hadn't really thought about the graphics on the left being a problem. I've actually kind of defended those a lot, because I like being able to see a large percent of the field there. But the more I've seen some other videos that actually do comparisons, and really that does take up an unnecessary amount of the screen. And I'm glad that the CW tried something very different. And I think this is now my new favorite here, which is the graphic at the bottom, not even the entire bottom, like the wide open coverage that TNT did back in the 2000s. Or 2010s thereabouts. But a rectangle down there, and then everything would come out of that rectangle. Nothing would come from anywhere else. There'd be an interview, it would pop up from a little window, and it would show the person's name. Or if it would show a replay, it would have a little window, and it showed like it was live coverage. Or it would show a pit stop or something like that. And it was very engaging. But the focus the entire time was what was happening on the track. And even though the video quality was lower, I really did get a better sense of speed in that race. Even though the Xfinity cars versus the trucks were more stable, I thought it was so engaging to look at. I was like, wow, this is really cool. I mean, you got to have some graphics. We're never going to have another time again where it's like in 4:3 ratio and no graphics. That wasn't perfect either. But this I really liked. I'm going to be very anxious to see these races through new eyes, see some of these tracks perhaps shown a bit more. I think the camera angles they did were better. I thought they did a lot more where they did kind of that classic tower view where you have the cars going through turns 3 and 4, and then you follow them into the tri-oval instead of doing a cut there and doing a speed shot, or one of those, digital cameras that swing from left to right. They still had the camera in turn 1 that kind of did the swinging thing, but they did less of it, which was good. I noticed that. That was cool. And then there's the little things, the checkered flag transition into the commercials. That looked really cool. The music, I liked the music. I know it was a bit loud, but I'd rather it be loud than not hearing it at all or having it suck. So I'll go with that. I think between those 3 options, that's the preferable one. I like the graphics. I like the thing they did at the beginning where, all these are like Fox does like kind of the Transformers thing where you have kind of the Megatron thing and the plates moving and stuff. They did this thing but CW did this deal where it's like a liquid and it's like pouring over the car and it's showing up that way. It's just cool. And yeah, like that reviewer said, it felt very current. It felt young. I mean, you have these two very young reporters. I mean, again, McMurray, I know he's getting older than he was back in 2002 when he was the new kid on the block and he was, winning for Marlin and stuff, but he still exudes, he's still just as youthful as Kligerman is, in the sport there. And they're excited. They want to be there. They want to tell you what's happening. And they want you to be excited about it too. And they want to bring it to you. And that just makes everybody around you better. I think Adam was doing a solid job. It made him about as good as he could be in that dynamic. But, either he needs direction to have him just get in there and add to it, or you got to get somebody in there who's going to do it. Because I think if they have that, they really have a winner on their hands. So it's not perfect, but man, it's got me excited. I don't like the Atlanta race next week. I was thinking if I didn't have anything positive to say about the Atlanta race next week, I was going to just have a stream where I just don't talk about the race and we're going to just talk about, I don't know, Thomas the Tank Engine or disaster movies or something like that. But I mean, with the CW here, I mean, I think we're going to have plenty to talk about. I'm going to be very excited to see how much that carries on. So I think I was very, very happy with it. I was very happy with it. And let me check my notes here, make sure I hit all the points I want to hit on this. Oh, the Chris Wright incident. I like that there was, I don't really need to go to the second screen for this one. I appreciate the analysis that there was. Chris Wright, driving for Our Motorsports this year, had a real checkered past in the truck series, tore up some equipment there for the Nice team, went back down to ARCA, coming back up now to the Xfinity series with his sponsor out there. Had an incident where he just came down pit road way too fast, bowled into Josh Bilicki, hit him hard enough to actually disable the transponder on the 91 car. And it was just an absurd situation. It's like, why did he just stay on the track? There was a video that was posted earlier today, and I retweeted it on my account, that showed that maybe Wright got sideswiped by Anthony Alfredo on the track, that he intended to stay on the track, and then he got deflected down to pit road. Still doesn't explain why he didn't bring it up in the interview afterwards, where he blamed it on his spotter. Still doesn't explain where he didn't lock the brakes any sooner. But the best part of all that, as absurd as that situation was, he has the interview, and I loved that McMurray and Kligerman called him out on it immediately. I don't like dogpiling on people, but what I do like is I like people in the booth that they call it how they see it. That they're not just going to be like, oh, that happened, or they'll just move on or not say anything. So many of the Fox broadcasts do that, and NBC is guilty of this too. They'll just have something come up, and they'll just kind of either explain it away or just be like, or just ignore it, or just kind of just roll right past it. In this one here, they're like, no, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, yes, thank you. And again, it shouldn't be, I hope the sanctioning body is okay with that, because it should be okay to do that. It's not that you're against NASCAR or anything like that. It's not like you're calling out all, there should be some room to talk about controversy in this sport, whatever it is. When you don't have that room, you just create this culture where you don't have drivers able to say anything, where you don't have broadcasters able to say anything. That doesn't help anybody. People want to know what is going on. And you want to hear from analysts, from their experience, if what you're hearing or what you're seeing makes sense, or if this move was the right move to make. That's so important. But I think that was the other one. Eric Brennan did the ARCA race. Thank you, Rusty Ralston. Yes, for $2 on the super chat. Thank you so much. Yes, get him in the booth. I think Eric would work really, really good with Kligerman and McMurray. Oh man, yes, that would be perfect. He already worked so well with Phil Parsons in the ARCA race. I can only imagine what he'd do with these two. It's got to be young. It's got to be new. It's got to be current, as the guy said. And Fox and NBC, they better be watching. And thank goodness NBC has Lee Diffie, because Lee Diffie, he deserves a lot of the credit in this, because he got the ball rolling. He made people be like, oh, maybe Brock isn't just bitching at nothing. Like, maybe there really is something about having decent broadcasters in the booth to actually tell you what the hell is going on. Not to make it all about me, but I can't help it. This is, when Lee Diffie came in there and single-handedly gave at least 3 of the best calls in the entire season in all 3, of all 3 divisions, in very short order there, I was like, yes, like, thank goodness. And this CW deal is just the next step down the road. And we just need to keep going down that road. Stop moving people around that we've had for years, that have had their experience, that have had their opportunity in many different options to make a name for themselves. And, some still work and some don't work, and some the chemistry's there and some the chemistry's not there. But really embrace that, because we're embracing it everywhere else. We got new fans we're bringing into the sport. We got new drivers that are coming into the sport, new teams. Who knows what's going to happen on the other side of this lawsuit, and the potential of maybe, NASCAR selling a share of its interest in, to another party. Who knows if that's going to happen? There's a lot that, NASCAR is always at its best when it is that current, and it's got the potential to be there, and we're getting closer to it. I can feel it, and it's really good. And so I am so happy with that. The leaderboard, I like that they used the leaderboard for the choose code. So they showed the cars themselves and where they lined up. That was really good. The vertical thing does nothing for me. It doesn't explain like who's where. They emphasize too much the numbers and the drivers' faces. The cars are central. It's like trying to write Speed Racer, but you're just writing it about the person. It's like, no, it's the car. The car is the star, buddy. They tried to do that in the 2009 movie, and I still don't understand why they did that. The Mach 5 has very little screen time in the Speed Racer movie, and I can't explain why they did that. It was so stupid. But that's where we are. That's about all the notes I have. Great job. CW was good. That was a solid, I give it an A- at least. There's a couple things that are pretty obvious that they can work on. And if they get a better play-by-play guy, it's going to be really good. And I think they would be something that the other networks would look at enviously. And I think that would be good. The other thing that needs to be worked on is accessibility to it. I know there was a lot of controversy over the app, and that didn't show the broadcast live. I watched it on Hulu, so that's how I was watching it. But I know a lot of people were trying to use the app or something else, and they couldn't have access to it. They need to fix that too. People need to see this. And I don't know what needs to be worked out to accomplish that. But yeah, having it on tape delay, this isn't the 1980s or something like that, where you had some races that were, tape delayed. In my book, Cope, the 1990 Daytona 500, even in that era, when CBS was broadcasting the race, it wasn't shown live in Derek's home state. They were showing a basketball game, and they ended up having to replay it in the evening. So that was kind of a crazy deal. So they had, Derek's family, I believe it was, had to drive to another place that actually had the rights to show the race live. And that was crazy. So I think that was another one, but I think that was it. I need to talk about the Xfinity race itself, because I know I see your comment there. Is it Levillipi 14? Yeah, I haven't talked about the race itself. I should get into that, aside from the Chris Wright deal there. Jesse Love wins. Richard Childress Racing is dominant in the they have asserted their dominance on the super speedways, as if it wasn't enough to have Austin Hill be absolutely crushing out there these last few years, especially at Daytona, and really only wasn't a factor in the win in this because he had an axle leak that wouldn't have been safe to keep him out there. The fact that Jesse Love in his second season is absolutely just as good, I would say, after this one, just as good as Austin Hill in getting up there. It may just be the drivers, but I think it's the team as well. They got a really, really good super speedway program out there, better than even their Cup Series program. And it is something to see. And I would fully expect both of them to go up there and just dominate Atlanta next week. I think they're going to be very tough. I think the rest of the field is really going to have to sort things out in that one. They put on a great show. I think that move that he did on Sam Mayer was really gutsy. It could have easily spun him out. But those are the little moves you got to do to actually pull off a win, especially at Daytona. So I think that was a really good deal. So kudos to Jesse Love on the win there. Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed, Haas factory team, much like, again, the run we saw tonight for Cole Custer. great effort for the Haas Factory team's first foray in the Xfinity Series. They haven't missed a step at all from last year. Sheldon Creed should have won that race, was right up there. Mayer, I think, was a little less spectacular, but still got up to second there at the end. They did a fine job. The next generation over at the JR Motorsports is looking good. Carson Quapple had the rear of his car rebuilt from an early wreck, got into the top 5 and stayed there for most of the end of that race. The guy that almost won Dover last year in one of his first starts, fully expect him to find victory lane early and often. Connor Zilic had a car that was even more beat up than Carson Quapple's. And then all of a sudden, here he is. He's right up there too. He had to get cleaned out in another accident. That was the only reason he wasn't a factor in the win there at the end too. He could have very easily found his way to victory lane. So many tremendous talents. The restructuring between trucks and Xfinity this year about who has moved up and who's moved back, especially who's moved up in the Xfinity Series, is really good this year. And the Xfinity Series continues to put together some of the best racing that we see the entire weekend. This one I thought was really good. Again, more crashes than I would have liked. I'm starting to think again, that's just too much to ask in these super speedway races anymore. When you have, a big challenge out there too. But yeah, I thought they were really good. Thought Taylor Gray looked good there for Joe Gibbs. He's going to be good. My goodness, Harrison Burton coming back to where he won last August in the Cup Series, looking good. Jordan Anderson in an old Germain racing car that had to get the steel body cut off there. Great job by Matt Weaver for getting that story. Just huge. Some great runs here too. My goodness. Yeah. Let's see. I have more to say about this. I need to step away for just a moment here, and then we'll get into more of the Xfinity and the Truck Series race here in just a second. And we'll talk more about the Truck Series and the ARCA broadcast as well. We'll kind of finish on that before we get into trivia here in a little bit. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Definitely stay on hand here. I still got to catch up to your guys' super chats here as well. So we got a lot more coming up here on Behind the Wall in just a moment. I will be back in just a second here. Okay. Alrighty. Had to just step away for just a moment there, folks. We got our special guest on here still. Badger has actually been on my lap here the whole show. You probably heard him on the microphone here a little bit. So he's just tuckered out. See, this is about how I felt after the race here. Just a little, a little exhausted. But no shortage of stuff to talk about here, too. So I'll keep him just off camera here in the meantime. So let me adjust this back down. I want to jump back into the Xfinity Series race and kind of some of the other runs here too. Dean Thompson, career best run, 8th place finish, just a few starts in the Xfinity Series. We saw him in the Truck Series. I know he struggled a lot back there when he was driving for Tricon Garage there, but getting back out there, driving for Sam Hunt's effort. which has always been good. They've really shown flashes of brilliance with whoever's driving that car, whether it's been, my goodness, Sage Karam almost winning his first race at Road America. All of that, very, very exciting. But getting this top 10 run out there, congratulations to him. And that was good to see. Jeremy Clements, I know a lot of the folks over JD Motorsports and some other teams have been joining that effort over there. I believe Case Cullenback, I believe, Gabe Wood is over there too. Great effort that they had out there, finishing in the 9th spot there as well. Patrick Emmerling at the SS Greenlight team, they had a bit of a snafu on pit road, and Emmerling had a top 10 finish out there after starting back in the 35th spot. We saw the Viking Motorsports team. They switched to Chevrolet here. They finally get a great finish out there. Really, 11th place finish. De Benedetto, I was kind of wondering what was going on with that Viking deal last year, because it was basically the 38 for RSS, and they just kind of developed their own branding and then kind of built a team around it. Did a fine job out there and really had a great finish out here. So I hope that that's going to be a good sign of things to come here. That team can kind of keep the momentum up. Really kind of, you have these different kind of tiers of the teams. You got your top ones there kind of going for the wins, and then you got the other ones through the field there. But that was good to see there too. Christian Eckes, after his Truck Series run last year, I expect great things out of him over the Kaulig deal. I know him landing that 16 deal there is going to be really exciting. And he, although he was back at the 12th place finish at the end there, certainly not for a lack of effort. Cesar Baccarella's always had some good runs in the super speedways. Joey Gase as well, both of them in the top 15. A couple teams that were further back. Other ones that got shaken out. Ryan Sieg, once again, right on the march. That one video I posted, that fine run that Sieg was able to march up at the end, really making another all-out bid to get his first win. Now still going back to the team's old headquarters in Atlanta next week. I know they've moved their headquarters over to more the Charlotte area this year, but that's going to be another thing to look forward to next week, and I think another race that they could be very competitive in. Among the new teams, Derek Cope's team, the Cope family racing effort, Leland Honeyman Jr. was very, very impressive, charging his way through the field there. Got stage points in stage 1. Looked like he was going to be really having a strong run out there. Unfortunately, got involved in one of the last accidents that dropped him back through the field there. Again, that's just going to be kind of the way that this plays out, especially with the the more inexperienced drivers out there. Although tonight we ended up basically still seeing what was happening here. The 39 is still in 39 is in North Carolina. Okay. No, Sir Wrinklestein, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, well, that's interesting. So there's even more of a split there. So you got the 99 breaking away from that. The 28, 29 are still in Georgia, and the 39 is in North Carolina. Very interesting. Okay. Well, that's still a big increase there for RSS Racing, and thank you for the clarification there, Sir Wrinklestein, for the correction on that. But yeah, I think that there was some interesting matches here. Ryan Ellis, we saw him battling in the top 10. Got to bring back his old number 71. There's a great picture on Brad Perez's Twitter of him wearing, Ellis wearing one of his 71 hats next to a picture of Dave Marcus's Coast Guard car from 1991. So that was pretty cool. So a lot of history of that number. And we saw that number do well tonight in the Cup Series with Michael McDowell as well. So that's definitely another good story there too. Looking further back here. We mentioned Austin Hill, the rear end failure that pretty much took him out of contention, led 56 laps. I think that the field's going to have a lot to be worried about next week in Atlanta, because I think he's going to be very, very tough in that race. But Daniel Dye ends up being your last place finisher. The first time he's finished last in the top 3 series. It was kind of an interesting article to write on that, kind of breaking down his rapid ascent. It's kind of, every once in a while we get a driver like Daniel Dye where it doesn't seem like there's a lot of buzz around them in the lower divisions, and then all of a sudden they're in the Truck Series, and they just have a huge marketing push, like a big store that's, selling all kinds of merch and so forth, and they're getting a lot of attention on TV. It's like, where is this coming from? That's kind of interesting from that deal. But again, Daniel Dye also landing a deal with Kaulig full-time this year. We did see him have some good runs last year. He was top 10, at Iowa? Looked good at some of the other races there. It may well be he's just one of those drivers that maybe, is kind of off and on in the Truck Series, but then the Xfinity Series kind of find a bit more of their consistency. We'll see if that's going to be the story the rest of this year as well. Rough evening for Brennan Poole. I know that was one of the fantasy picks that a lot of the commentators were talking about. There's maybe a dark horse coming into it. The hood coming loose on that car after the damage in the Daniel Dye, Brandon Jones incident. That ends up being the story kind of on that end. But I'm very excited about the Derek Cope team. And again, a lot of these other efforts coming into the ranks here too. Let's see. But a good battle at the end. It's unfortunate they had a big wreck right at the white flag. It was very clear that the leader got the finish line there. And I think even if they hadn't, I think they were going to have a very hard time beating Jesse Love there at the end. I think even if those two Haas Fords got together and drafted past, I don't know if that would work. But we'll see. Next time they go to a super speedway, I mean, if you don't, I don't really count Atlanta too much in that regard. But Talladega in the spring, I think if the Haas factory team has another good effort there, that'll be something really interesting. But they got some good pieces over there, and I think that's really cool to see. Because my expectations for that team were very low this year. But maybe they've just leaned things down so much that it's much easier to manage, and maybe that's a good deal for them. So that'll be something to look forward to. But yeah, great, phenomenal Xfinity Series broadcast, which is in stark contrast to the Truck Series broadcast. From pointing the camera at the wrong driver when they're talking about Michael McDowell, and they did so much research on this, and they're showing the wrong truck over at the Spire Motorsports thing, to the, I mean, to just saying Parker Kligerman, at the end. I mean, just like, what? Like, come on. Like, there's got to be, it's unacceptable. It's becoming unacceptable at this point. It just seemed kind of quirky and just a little bit off. And okay, maybe they're just kind of getting their feet under them. But now with Lee Diffie over at NBC, with this new look booth over at the CW, and those things kind of becoming more established and becoming more, kind of recognized really in the sport, they've got to pick it up. And I know that Fox is focusing much more on IndyCar, and it's good that they're doing that because that sport certainly needs it. And then the ads are fun and cute and everything. But if they're not going to use their NASCAR contract, then somebody else should have it. Because, the way they do these Truck Series broadcasts, it's unfortunate. Because I think really that Truck Series race, that's what made it so easy to do commentary over it. Yes, it wasn't live. I get it. That's why I did a live one on the Xfinity thing afterwards. But anybody could do it. My point in doing in the Truck Series one was not to say like, I could do it better live. It was more to show this is all the stuff that's going on. And, that just wasn't getting described during the end of that race. I think that truck race was great. I think it was one of the best truck races we had in a while when they were racing. The officiating and the stage cautions in a ludicrously short 100-lap race made that more of a problem, where it had just a series of sprint races there in it. If they didn't have the stage cautions, it would have been an even better race, I think. Because when they were under green, they were just absolutely manhandling those trucks and trying to hang on out there. I liked when Kevin Harvick brought up in, I think it was a dual racer qualifying, about how the wheel can get kind of ripped out of your hands and kind of move the car to the left, or trucks in this case here, when you kind of get on the stripe there, because it's just something that happens with the steering. But you could really see it in the Truck Series broadcast. You could see how competitive they were getting, and there were so many lead changes. I mean, Bailey Curry took the lead, and I don't think his name even got mentioned by anybody in the booth. It was just insane. It's like, what are they looking at? And I looked like they were doing it from Charlotte, which is crazy because they had like Joey Logano. It's like you're gonna get Joey Logano from Daytona and then bring him over to Charlotte to do it remotely. I don't understand that. It's the same thing I did with Larry McReynolds before. It's like, okay, where does that come in? But it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing you heard from me before and from other ones here too. They don't want to describe the action. They don't sound engaged in it. And it leaked over into the ARCA race as well, even though it was a different set of different announcers there. And it looked like they were actually, they were at the track because they had Cletus McFarland there in the booth. It was exactly the same. It was just like a wreck's happening. And Jamie Little's like, I'm going to need a number on that one. It's like, no, start describing what's happening. Like, if you can't see something, describe what you can see. That's the thing. That's why you have three people in the booth, because they're all going to see different things. And that's great, because together you have what should be close to a really good experience of what's happening on the track there. But that just, I don't get where that's coming from. It's not really improving in that sense. And I'm glad that we had one that was remote and one that was in person, because the delivery was exactly the same between the Truck Series race and the ARCA race. It was no different. And that was too bad. That was too bad, because again, I thought the truck race was good. I thought the ARCA race, again, it tended to be a bit of a crash fest, more so I would say than the last few we've had, certainly the last like 15 years. But the truck race, there were some incidents. You had, individual truck spins out of the lead. I mean, my goodness, you have Caden Honeycutt had a great year last year as a part-timer, gets this ride over at the Aldis team with the 45 truck. That's historically been a really good entry, and spins out of the lead, and they're just like, oh, look at that. And it's like, what? It's just like, come on. It's the leader of the race. I know it's only a couple laps into it, but like, come on, just, step up a little bit here. And if you don't have it, bring next person up, whoever that is. That's just where it is. And it's, my memory of it, I've kind of memory holed it a little bit, because the Xfinity one was just so good, and I really enjoyed it, and it brought me back into it again. But something else needs to be different. And that was where, it got to the end of the race. You got all this stuff happening. You got, this guy's moving here, this guy's moving there. And is the caution going to come out? Is the caution going to come out? And this is a story because it was a story in the dual race. And can we get a green flag finish? And, and who's going to be up there? And Parker Kligerman, is in the 75 truck. And he, especially the fact that he got, screwed over by a caution last year. And you get this wreck, and you got a couple other trucks wrecking, and then Corey Heim is closing, and is he going to catch him? And I want to just kind of bring all that in there. That's why I did the video on that. And it's a bit presumptuous and rude, and I get it. But I'm tired. They're not listening to the complaints. They're not listening to the complaints, whether it's from me or from anywhere else. And other people are showing that they are capable of doing it. So I just did that as kind of a how-to. It's like, okay, here's what it is. Yes, I've already seen the finish. Yes, we already know what happens. That's why I had the basketball game in the background, so you can tell I wasn't doing it live. But it's like, here's how you do it. Just try to do that. And, and the way I wasn't doing it wasn't perfect either. It wasn't, even after seeing the finish. And I know it was harder doing it live, because I tried doing that for the Xfinity race too. And was it as good? No, I wouldn't say it was as good. But I bet that, if I was in the booth doing it live over and over again, it would get better. That's the problem. If you're not good at it, improve. They have to not be satisfied with it. I can't believe there's somebody in their ear that's looking at this and just saying, oh yeah, that's good. It's like, I just think, I'm starting to think, I've said it was bad direction. I think at this point, it's just no direction. Because again, it doesn't change. It's the exact same every single time. And I don't get it. And I'm just beside myself, because it gives the impression, and I know you can say, oh, well, just listen to the radio. Just listen to the radio. The average person that hasn't experienced the sport before, if the sport's ever going to grow, it needs to have new fans. And thankfully, we have had new fans. But if it's going to grow even more, it needs more new fans. Where are those new fans going to be watching this? They're going to be watching it. They're not going to be listening to the radio. I'm sorry. That's just true. They don't know how to find PRN or MRN. That's just generally not going to be the way they're going to experience it. It's a very visual sport. The best radio broadcasts are how they're able to draw the pictures in your mind to it. That's their job. That's why it's better. It has to be better. But the TV is where they're going to experience it, because it's on these networks, because it's on FS1, because it's sandwiched between basketball games and hockey games and everything else out there. That's where they're going to see it. It's not a vestigial organ, folks. It's got to work properly. And it's got to be good for people that are into the sport already. And it's got to be attractive enough for people who don't have an interest in it, and maybe are just flicking through these and just wondering what it is. If it's something of the CW's quality, it can pull you in. I didn't want to leave my seat during the Xfinity race. I was just like, wow, I mean, this is really good. And it's sometimes hard for me to do that from what I do, because I look at the last place finisher thing. And that pulls me away. But then, luckily in this race, it was a perfect storm because the wreck happened so early. And then, I could just kind of get lost in it. And it was like, oh, this is great. I want to feel that way on all these, and it takes work. I would rather take something that's worse than what we have now if it's going to build to something better than we have now. I'm kind of at that point, really. I'm not expecting it to be, perfect out the box, just like the one at the CW isn't. Again, it's very close. It's way closer. But yeah, there's a lot more that needs to come up there too. So yeah, that's the thing. For hardcore, if you want to listen to the radio on it instead of the TV, that's fine. I get that. I get why people do that. But understand that that's not the average viewer. Understand that's not new viewers. That's why it's important. Otherwise, why would they show it on TV at all? I mean, I'm sure they just rather just say, if they just want to cater to hardcore fans, they would just do it on the radio. But do we want to take that step back? I don't. I love having the onboard cameras. I love being able to pull up the timing and scoring here. That needs to keep going, and it's got to have fresh blood. It just needs it. And I know the sport knows that because they keep saying they're looking for it. I'm reading articles from 2001 that are saying the same thing in 2025, that are just like, well, we got to get this age group. It's like, well, just try something. Just, realize what you're not doing well. It's hard to do. Believe me, I know that in my own work too. I actually had some very good discussions this weekend on even actually my starting grid from Daytona this week. I had some great discussions. People are like, well, I didn't really like this or that. It's like, okay, good. And one guy was like worried he upset me or something. I'm like, dude, no, tell me. Cause like, look, it's the same thing. If I don't hear, if something sounds bad, like say I have a video I put up here and there's a loud hum in the background and nobody says anything about it, I'm just going to assume, oh, okay, I was probably fine. Maybe I didn't hear it, but everybody else hears it. It's like, oh no, well then, okay, that's not good. That needs to be fixed. That can't happen the next time. That's what improving things should be. That's the way it should go. So yeah, I think that's important. It's really important. It is. So, I think that's, but again, I don't want this to be confused with being negative about it, because I do think that the sport in general is on the right trajectory, certainly in the broadcast realm here. And eventually the other networks are going to see, they watch these other networks. They know what they're doing. And if they see, they're like, ooh, we like to have that, or we should probably try doing that. Or maybe we do this better than they could do because we have X. Like, I don't know, just something like that would be really, really good to see. So, I don't know. But I think that's another place to look at it, at the same time. But other than that, I mean, the Truck Series race certainly had its share of controversy. Kligerman wins the race. It's going to be a great story. He's so happy, almost on the verge of tears, it looked like in his interview. Biggest win of his career. And then what happens? The truck gets disqualified. He's not given the win. Corey Heim so far credited as the winner. We do know that Kligerman is appealing the decision, and the Henderson team are appealing the decision and looking to get a review on it there. They said also that they feel like they have a good case for it. Best of luck to him. If it does get reinstated, certainly I'll update my article, and certainly, congratulate him again on a tremendous victory that they had there too. That was the other great thing with Kligerman too. He rose above that. I mean, that was a crushing disappointment, but came out in that broadcast on Saturday and really showed his professionalism. He even laughed it off a bit during the discussion with McMurray in the pre-race. I thought that was great. I thought that was a huge, and I never doubted it. I mean, Kligerman is the big thing I would compare between Kligerman and McMurray is their professionalism. They're so meticulous, and just they care about what they're doing. It's not just a hobby. It's not just something that they have a casual interest in. They have a very intense interest in this sport and staying current with it. I mean, the cars by themselves have changed so much since McMurray has driven, and now you got Kligerman, stepping back and scaling back as well. That takes a lot of work to do. I have to look inward on myself and kind of make sure, I'm keeping up with things too. Again, talking about like the under tray versus diffuser and stuff like that. I had to get in a discussion about that, get corrected on that just recently. And I'm glad it happened because, again, now I have that information. I can work with it, and it still tells me, okay, don't get rusty on this because, that's going to be a problem. Yeah, again, I think that was tremendous, and I hope, best of luck on their appeal. I have no idea what their prospects are, but if he feels confident about it, I guess we'll get more news on that when it comes. So we'll find out. We did get some really good runs here in the meantime. The Josh Rialb effort here with Jason White finishing in 8th and Frankie Muniz in the 10th spot there. Great efforts for them. Josh himself in the 18th spot there. Great deal for them. Having trucks, they were in one piece and heading into Atlanta. We'll see if how things go for them. I think it's a great effort. Inheriting, I guess, the owner points for the Max Siegel team there for the the Rev Racing deal there for the number 2 there for the Josh's effort. But yeah, again, interesting new talents coming up there and having a good run. I mean, I was so impressed with like Lane Riggs and Chandler Smith there at the front row team. They looked really good. I know Chandler got some nose damage and that ended up being a problem there towards the end. They were so good in the race. Just so many good talents out there. Looking at the rest of the lineup here, Bailey Curry leading up there very briefly. Drop back towards the end. Let's see here. Yeah, Klingerman with a disqualification. Yeah, just kind of looking at some of the wrecks here, too. Raja Karuth and the accident on the back straightaway. That was a rough deal there, too. But again, I was very surprised. I actually rewatched that race that night there, just to kind of brush up on that there, too, because last bro was out of town, so we were kind of watching it again afterwards. The only problem was just the cautions. And again, that goes more to the stages and the officiating, and that's less the drivers themselves and the competitors. I think that generally that went pretty well. Oh, the Rev Racing points went to Spire. Okay, thank you, baby strawberries. Okay, there you go. Yeah. Kudos to the folks that were showing the owner point transfers because there was so many of those this year. It was very hard to keep track of that. Excuse me just a moment. All right, there we go. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I mean I mean, I guess we could talk a little bit. Let's see, did I have ARCA notes? Okay, I got a little bit on this. Um, that kind of leads us into the ARCA race there earlier on Saturday. Just an absolute crash fest. And I was, there are some positives there too. The nice, huge field that they had out there, that was really exciting. Hearing that Jerry Nadeau was back at the track there, helping out Nolan Wilson, his friend there, a 50-year-old driver out there, competing. Unfortunately, got in the first accident there after the Denison wreck there, entering the tri-oval there. Still good to see him out there and being involved. I don't know what other driver development deals Nadeau's involved with there this year, but again, still looking to stay involved at the track where Jerry actually finished 11th back in 1999 in the Daytona 500. But the ARCA race was, yeah, pretty messy there at the end. As happy as I am for Butterbean Queen and going to the Waffle House to celebrate and how fun that was cool. But man, it was back to the old vintage ARCA breaks and all the memes being proven true. And it's unfortunate because, I mean, on the one hand, yeah, it's on Fox and Fox is, I'm glad, stepping up more with their ARCA coverage this year. I think there's, the long term that's going to be good. But it was retro ARCA in both the best and worst ways. I think that's probably the best way you can describe it. At the same time too. But Phil Parsons and Trevor Bayne, I thought, were decent in the booth. They were about the same as they usually do. They're kind of in the Adam Alexander position, but again, I've already said enough about that angle there anyway. But yeah, my goodness, it was just wreck after wreck, and it just, Brayton Laster got in that wreck. I don't know what happened there, where his car broke loose and got in the wall, and that was such a shame because I know that mentioned Brayton briefly at the end of the Thursday show there. How big that was for him and the Wayne Peterson effort to get a car in the show there, and all the fan decals on the back of it, just like I saw with when he drove for Rise Motorsports last year, the 31 car. just an unfortunate deal there. And yeah, pretty much almost ran out of cars there at the end of it. But still, yeah, had a deal there where William Sawalich looked like he was having the hot hand, looked like he was going to charge up there and take the lead, and then somehow it didn't work out. And but Butterbean Queen gave a great interview there, much reminiscent to the Greg Van Alst interview from a couple of years ago. So that was good to see. I know there's gosh, what else we need to where am I looking at that? So I was trying to get that information there too. I should get the lineup here at the same time. Schofield. That's right. Good. Kudos to Jeff Schofield for running the owner points for Brad Smith. Smith wasn't able to enter the race there too, so that was really cool to see. And seemed like he had a decent run. I think he got rattled up there at the end. Where were the race results? Okay, let me get that pulled up. Swalich second, Jason Kitzmiller in third for the Rohrbaugh effort. So that was good to see there. LeVar Scott, Elio Castroneves running at the top five. Castroneves in that bit of a bizarre incident there at the end with the other driver that didn't know the race was over. So a little bit of a tangle there right at the end. But those things happened there. Jake Finch still denied a win at Daytona here after the altercation he had with, who was that last year? The other competitor that won the race there. It was the Truck Series driver. Previous to this track, that was Gus Dean. That's right. Gus Dean won that race. Alrighty. Yeah, my goodness. You just look at the race. It's the first time I've actually looked at this race results here. And yeah, it was pretty messy. Hopefully Craig Bracken's doing okay. That was the driver that hit the wall. I mean, that was a savage hit there he had on the back straightaway. Looked like the car was just out of control there after that first impact. Has anybody heard any updates on that? I haven't heard any more updates on that since they said that they sent him to a local hospital for further evaluation. It sounded like he was conscious, but I didn't have any other information on that. Let's see. We can talk about. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a name. I'm drawing a name. Cletus McFarland. That's right. I actually had to Google it. I keep forgetting the name. Okay. The Cletus McFarland thing was entertaining too. I liked the YouTube stream they did from inside the car there. I know there's a lot of discussion about, I mean, I guess kind of the satire of NASCAR, or, you know, kind of this Talladega Nights kind of personality and all that. I haven't watched too many of his videos or anything like that. I'm not that familiar with him. But I know that if people are excited about it, you know, that can only be a good thing. I don't have any real problem with that. And his interview was fun, and everybody was waiting for that. And I liked that he was in the booth, which was particularly funny because when he got in the booth, he was easily better than anybody else he was sitting with, which I think is why they kicked him out of there. And that was so funny to me because they kicked him out. They did a commercial break with 5 laps to go. And the commercial break just kept going and going. I'm like, they're playing all the Menards commercials, and I get it's the title sponsor, but why are they doing this commercial so late? And it's like, wow, this race is going to be over by the time they even get back. And then the call to finish just sucked. And so it was like, well, what was the point of all that? You could have just, I mean, I thought they were just going to keep Cletus in there and just have him just, you know, carry the rest of the way. Of course, if they did that, they probably end up just keeping him in the booth. So who knows? But I think that was another thing that just kind of pointed out how much that needs to change. Oh, my goodness. But, no, I mean, it was unfortunate he got taken out in a couple of accidents there in that one, but and I'll be interested to see if they fix the car up and run it at Talladega, because again, looking to cover that race in a couple of months there too, so that'll be another one to talk about. Yeah, we'll find out if that's going to be the story there too. So I mean, this weekend just had a little bit of everything, and yeah, I think that's why I feel just so. I think I feel a degree of exhaustion at the end of any one of these speed weeks here, even if it's compressed into 4 days and all that. You know, by and large, my experience is positive. There's a lot to be really excited about now. Again, whether it's the onboard cameras, whether it's the CW broadcast, whether it's some of these drivers that seem to be finding where they need to be the best that they can be, whether it's even, we talk about Dean Thompson in the Xfinity series, or Leland Honeyman with the Copes, or if we're talking about the Truck series where Daniel Hemrick is now teamed up with Christian Eckes' team from last year, the McAnally team. That's great to see, and that's very positive going forward. So, yeah, and the rain didn't spoil the race. So yeah, that was totally fine. Actually had, oh, it was 8 laps to go. I thought it was 5 to go. I know it was close to the end, but whatever it was what, 2 or 3 laps of commercials. But again, the comedy has always been a part of the broadcast, and so yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. So yeah, that's kind of where I am right now at the moment. My goodness, this has been a long stream, but usually it is for Daytona. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in here. I'm going to kind of shift gears into doing some, we'll do some trivia here at the end. Let's see. And we'll do that. And if you have your questions, I need to do super chats as well. We'll jump into that. We'll pick a category here. While everybody's picking the category, I'll do the super chats and jump into that. Oh, Desert Fox, your dad's a big fan of Cletus. Oh, that's great. That's great. No, yeah, he seemed like a hoot. I hope he does come to Talladega because I think that'll be a really fun interview. So, we'll see. But yeah, let's see here. Yeah, alrighty. Let's see. Whoop, nope, not that one. There we go. I hope you guys did enjoy the starting grid too, because I did get, it was a little different. I don't know if the audio sounded different, but this was the first video that I recorded with this microphone, which is my microphone that I use over at the track or planning to start to this year. And I was kind of wanted to use it more and more to kind of get used to it. Because usually I set up all this stuff here, like the stuff here with the screen and everything and the tablet, the microphone arm and stuff. And it just kind of takes a while to record a video that way. So I was hoping that there'd be a way to just do it way quicker, and maybe that would help the production time. So I used this for it, and I think it was pretty good. But, I mean, again, you guys are hearing it in a different way than I am, so maybe that's the kind of case, too. But hopefully that'll be something that kind of gets used more this year as well. But I actually didn't have a format picked over the offseason like I kind of have in the past. But I really liked the Joel Bray pictures where they had the perfect side view of the cars. Once I saw that, I was like, okay, this is perfect. Let's see if I can just kind of clip those layers out and just kind of layer them that way. And then we can use the horizontal space on the screen to show them, kind of like what they were kind of doing on the CW broadcast, really. And then at that point, that was really fun to do. So I hope hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, those of you who aren't in the Patreon, my next starting grid is going to be planned for the Xfinity race at Rockingham in April. So that's going to be really enjoyable as well. So look forward to that at the same time. Let's see here. Let's see. It has a little more bass to it. Okay. I did put the audio through a mixer, so that might have brought the bass up. But okay, that's good to know, though. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. I'll probably try it in another video just to see what it looks like. Maybe this next one. I'm hoping to do some recording tomorrow. So we'll see what happens here. Let's see. Alrighty. Okay, so we'll bring out the late 90s NASCAR Trivial Pursuit deal here. And let me know in the chat which category you'd like me to do some questions for. The categories, once again, are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are the categories. Once again, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Go ahead and mention in the chat which one you like. I need to do this right quick here, and we'll get into that, and we'll do some trivia questions, and yeah, I'll get to super chats, and we'll, yeah, anything else comes up, we'll go into that too. Hang on, I need to... My allergy medicine is failing me, so I need to blow my nose. So I'm going to cover the camera for just a moment here, and I'll be right back. Boom. Alrighty. Didn't need to go on. I probably should have just done the loading screen. I probably confused people that just jumped in here if they did. But yeah, this is more for the hangers on. Allergy seasons come early here to this region, so I need to get ahead of that here. There's something, I mean, the more I talk on here, the more I can tell it's going to my nose, so it's going to sound really, it's going to sound weird on the recording here. But that's okay. We'll get through that. Alrighty. Let's see here. Let's see. We got categories for tracks, NASCAR, pits, teams, drive. Okay, we're kind of all over the place. I'll go and do the super chats in the meantime, and then sum this up. Oh my goodness, we got a few here. Thank you so much, folks. We'll get into these. Probably easiest to use the mini feed here, and we'll do that. Okay. First one here, Beast of Metal, 1989. Thank you for your super chat for $5 on here. What the lack of caution on last lap tells me is that NASCAR fell asleep at the wheel and skidded into the most beneficial result. This isn't over. Fair point. Again, I do think that, you know, if the other races hadn't played out the way they did, and if the uproar wasn't as much as it had been, they probably would have thrown a caution there, not even blinking about it. The moment when the first car got sideways there on the back straightaway, and the race would have ended under caution. It still would have had Byron as the winner. Things didn't change there, but wasn't it just noticeably better to still allow it to finish under green? Didn't that just feel better? Like, honestly, to me it did, honestly, even if there's just a couple cars, because you don't know that in the moment. You don't know if it's going to be 2 cars or 5 cars or, you know, enough for somebody to make some kind of move. We very nearly had that in the Truck Series race where Corey Heim was catching Kligerman. If that caution didn't come out, you know, would we even be talking about a Kligerman penalty? Maybe not. Things could have turned out that way. But you're right. I mean, this isn't over. I agree. I think that at the very least, NASCAR needs to come out and make a statement and be clear about this. Because, yeah, it's even more confusing now. Now it's like, okay, well, does Eric Jones get the credit for the win in the duel, which would have given him the same starting spot in the 500 anyway? You know, I don't see them changing that. But they certainly need to look ahead. And Atlanta, as much as they're hyping it, it has very much the potential of just being another big mess again. With them trying to turn it into a super speedway. I keep hearing from people that it's evolving into something else, but I don't know what on earth that is, because it's not Atlanta. It's just some place now. I don't even know what it is, but we'll find out if that's going to be the story next week. Bowser Jr. XD, thank you for your super chat for $4.99. I got to see my favorite driver win the Daytona 500 in person. It doesn't get any better than that. I would agree. Well, congratulations to you and to Byron there on the win there. Just thrilling. I mean, yeah, huge win for him. The way that he did it and how unpredictable the end of the race ultimately became. Yeah, congratulations to him. So definitely live it up. I'm sure you are over there too. So that's fantastic. Michael Jensen for your super chat for $10. Thank you very much. Reading on here, Junior Johnson, Jimmy Johnson, and John Hunter Nemechek with top 5s. Allgaier in 9th, Jordan Anderson and Patrick Emmerling top 10s, Ruggiero 2nd, Jason White and Frankie Muniz top 10s. That's why Daytona is awesome. Absolutely agree. I didn't even talk about Gio Ruggiero. Yeah, he did a fantastic job at the truck race. Looked like he was going to easily win in his debut, kind of pull a John King like a few years ago. Didn't quite happen, but man, I mean, still getting the second spot pending the results of the disqualification ruling for Kligerman. Great effort for him, and yes, definitely deserves a mention there as well. Some great stories for this weekend, and that's the important thing. I always like it when there's less wrecking about it, especially on the last lap, if you can just have a green flag finish. But I think it's another way to look at it there too. And Rusty Ralston, thanks again for your super chat for $2. Give me the heads up on Eric Brennan being the ARCA commentator. Yes, I stand by it there. I think that he would do a fantastic job in the booth for the CW, or perhaps lead another group elsewhere. Who knows? That's going to be the one to really look at the same time. Let's see here. Kind of browsing the rest of the chat here in the meantime. Jude Fernandez, yeah, I did get your comment there as well about ESPN confusing Andy Petrie with Dale Jarrett. They do sound similar, but yeah, I mean, I always figured Petrie stood out a little more in that sense, but I think it was much more of an issue on NBC there. But yeah, let's see. CW app. Yeah, I didn't use the CW app. I don't know what was going on with that. That's definitely another one too. Let's see. Jumping down to the end here. Let's see. Where are we? Yeah, finishing under green's always better, even if it's just the last lap or something. Yeah. Let's see. I got 2 for tracks, 1 for wild card, teams. Okay, we'll do tracks. We'll just go ahead and jump into that and get a couple of questions here, folks. I assume, okay, wow, we still got 120 people here. Thank you so much to those of you tuning in. If you're new to the streams here, again, I usually do these about 15 minutes after the finish of each Cup Series race. Talk about the weekend's racing action. I haven't done the second screen stuff as much. I'd like to integrate that more as we go forward because I think it's more instructive than me trying to describe some of these moments here. But yeah, doing that and then do some trivia at the same time, super chats. We do everything in between here. Yeah, any questions you guys have or anything I missed from this weekend that definitely needs to be brought up, definitely bring it up in the chat and we'll go from there. Mad Dog Kelly, I see your comment here as well about which ticker I prefer. I like CWs. I mean, maybe may just be a recency bias, but I'm very pleased with it. I think it really, I found myself enjoying the experience of the race way better because I was talking to Laspro about this and I think that's something I missed so much as a kid or certainly a younger fan. Even when we only did like one race a year, one of the best things I always enjoyed was taping it at home and then going back and then watching the race and seeing what it looked like on TV and how they produced it and what like intro they used or what they said about a certain moment or, you know, just how it looked to people on TV just to kind of understand it. And, you know, we've kind of fallen off that a bit in more recent years. And I'd like to kind of get back into that. Sears Point's always one. We still watch that. You know, nowadays it seems like watching that experience of watching it is so short because like, you know, the commercials and whatnot, fast forwarding through that, that's how quick it turns around. But that's kind of, I think, another measure of how successful a broadcast can be. First question in the tracks category here. Who posted the fastest time ever in a stock car at 212.809 miles per hour? Yeah, Bubba 121. Yeah, that was really good. So that was an enjoyable run there for Bubba Wallace. He did a great job. It's unfortunate he got damaged at the end of the race here today. I mean, otherwise I think he would have been really fun to kind of work his way in the pack there. But again, you know, it's another driver that'll find his way up there one of these days. Who posted the fastest time ever in a stock car at 212.809 miles per hour? Too easy of a question. A lot of you guys are getting it already. Of course, it's Bill Elliott. It's awesome, Bill Elliott. You guys are getting that already. Desert Fox. Oh, I'm glad you say it's the streams are cozy. I'm glad you appreciate that. I do these shows. I never really think about a tone so much, but if it works, I'm pleased to help with that. Alrighty. Okay, I'm trying to get a harder question. There's some easier ones. Okay, no, that was too easy. Let's see. No. Yeah, how about that? Alrighty, here we go. Okay, how about this one? What track was the site of Darrell Waltrip's first NASCAR Winston Cup win? Don't look it up. Try to predict it here. What track was the site of Darrell Waltrip's first NASCAR Winston Cup win? That is the question. But what is the answer? All right. Boo, boo, boo. Let's see here. Do we have a call on inspection, by the way? I don't know if I saw that in the chat here. Let's see. I see points. No, I don't think I see one yet. Unless you guys do. Definitely let me know. Here we go. What track was the site of Darrell Waltrip's first NASCAR Winston Cup win? I guess it's for Bristol, And Nashville and Bristol. The answer is indeed Nashville, the Nashville Fairgrounds. You guys got that there. Whoop. Make sure this camera stays in focus. I saw my Bowman Gray stream. I apologize. We had, it went out of focus. I don't even know what I did. I must have put something in front of the camera, and then it went out of focus for about 5 minutes in there. So I'm sure the viewership dropped off there, but hopefully that was not too much there. Alrighty. Next one. Let's see. Two. Let's see. Not that. Here we go. How many, we're looking for a number here this time. How many short tracks hosted NASCAR Winston Cup events during the 1998 season? How many short tracks hosted NASCAR Winston Cup events during the 1998 season? That is the question. Badger's falling asleep down here. You want to take a look? There he is. Yep, he's probably hear him snoring on the microphone a little bit. That's where he likes to stay. When I'm not here and the blanket's sitting in the chair, he'll just run up here and just sit right there. That's where he wants to be. Chihuahuas are always great lap dogs. I like that he doesn't snap at me when I pet him, so that's always good. Alrighty. How many short tracks hosted NASCAR Winston Cup events during the 1998 season? Last dog. There you go. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. We got guesses for 4 and 5 and 3 and 6. And alrighty, here we go. The answer is 3. 3. So it's just Bristol, Martinsville, and Richmond still. There you go. Yeah, it doesn't qualify Rockham. Good question, Big G. I've heard some call it a short track. You know, the mile track or a mile and change. I've heard Darlington mentioned in the short track context, but I mean, it's just such a thing of its own. Alrighty. Now let's see. Boop, 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 boop. Not that. Let's see. Oh, this is a good question. Okay, let's do this one. What was the only super speedway where Richard Petty won in a Ford? Okay, let me read that again. Don't look it up. What was the only super speedway where Richard Petty won in a Ford? Got a Ford versus Ferrari kind of question here. Alrighty. Yeah, if I consider Dover and Phoenix, yeah, it's possible. It's possible, but this one is not. So it's going for the stricter definition of under a mile length. What was the only super speedway where Richard Petty won in a Ford? That is our question for tonight. Oh, Kangaroo's Wild. You remember this device too? Yeah, this is fun. We've used a couple of other trivia things on the show here, really since the disqualification show era. Before this is basically the same show, but yeah, this one's been the more persistent one here. I got this particular one at all night party when I graduated from high school. They had like a thing where you did like door prizes and stuff, and I had to make sure to win enough tickets to get this. But luckily, I was the only NASCAR fan. Well, probably one of only 2 NASCAR fans in my school. So there you go. What was the only super speedway where Richard Petty won in a Ford? And the answer is Dover. Dover. Andrew Bremner, looks like you got it. I think you were the first one. We got Rockingham up here, Darlington. Joseph Schneiderman, you got it as well. Very good. Yeah, a Ford at Dover. All right. Ooh, here's another good one. Okay, we're getting some good questions here. We'll do a couple more here, and then we'll probably wrap up. I know, oh goodness, it's kind of late. I don't know if you guys, how many of you guys have Monday off or not, or hopefully. Yeah, Dover isn't the super speedway. I'm with you. Yeah, that is confusing, but it's badly written. But Some of these questions do get that way. That would be kind of a judge's call on that. All right. Next question. Who won a 200-mile Indy-style race at Darlington in 1950? Let me read that again. Who won a 200-mile Indy-style race at Darlington in 1950? That is our question. Who won a 200-mile Indy-style race at Darlington in 1950? Don't look it up. Go ahead and try to guess here. Alrighty. We got some guesses coming in. We got Johnny Mintz. We got Fireball Roberts. Lee Petty. Curtis Turner. Okay, we got some good guesses. I'll let a few more get in. I'll get the question one more time here. Who won a 200-mile Indy-style race at Darlington in 1950? Oh, I'm seeing on my Twitter feed here, there was some controversy over that montage that put Earnhardt's crash in it. I'm of two minds on it. I mean, it's unavoidably, because it was in a montage about the 25th anniversary of NASCAR on Fox. And certainly that weekend and that race is central to the lore of NASCAR on Fox. It really altered the trajectory of really how they've handled these broadcasts. So that moment certainly need to be shown. But did they need to necessarily show Earnhardt's car in the wall in the background? Not really. They could have edited that a bit. It also seemed like they held on it a bit long. It was probably only about a couple seconds, but it felt like a bit. So yeah, I see the frustration. I would have rather, usually when it comes to fatal accidents, at least in other projects, I mean, this hasn't been the case in mine. I find in the context of when it's about the subject, it has to be in there. But when it's more like, oh, this is fun and this is exciting and look at all the great things that have happened, you probably don't want to show that in there. You probably want to leave that out if you would. And if you're gonna show it, there should be a tonal shift where it's like, you start off as like, okay, well, it started with the worst tragedy in the sport, and then we came out of it, and this is all the things we've done since then. You could do that. That would have been more appropriate. If I were editing it, that's the way I would have approached it. And that's only if I wanted to put, I mean, you would have to put the Earnhardt thing in there. It has to be in there. I get it, but maybe not in that way and not with that tone. There's a lot of videos on YouTube I see, especially that deal with that content, where it's just, it's so tricky to do it. I mean, and there's ways that I've done it that I'm sure some people probably don't like the way I've done it either. Delicate subjects are to be handled delicately. And that's the best you can really do. These days with clickbait and stuff like that, it really rides the line on that. I'm not saying that this montage was clickbait, but I mean, it kind of had almost a similar feel to it there a little bit. So yeah, it's like he's showing 9/11 footage of patriotic music. Yeah, it's kind of like that, Jude Fernandez. That reminds me of a video. I really liked that music. What was that song? The Let's See How Far We've Come song that one group did. I know NASCAR did a montage with it, and I really liked listening to that song. I think it's got a really good flow to it. And then somebody put a video up on YouTube where they synced it with 9/11 footage, and it just like, oh great, it just ruined the song for me. Like, it's something like that. It's just like, oh my goodness. But yeah. Let's see here. Who won a 200-mile Indy style? Oh, we haven't got the question here. Who won a 200-mile Indy style race at Darlington in 1950? The answer is Johnny Parsons. I don't think anybody got that. Was it Johnny Parsons? Matchbox 20. Thank you, Scott. That is the one. And Joseph, yes, there you go. I'm glad you got a Richard Petty question down there for you. Let's see. Yeah. Joseph Schneiderman, thank you so much for your super chat for $5 here. Say what you will about the president. It was nice to see Richard Petty with the president again. Vibes of his in his day in 1984. Yes, that was really cool. I mean, if you think about all the presidents that Richard Petty himself has met, my goodness. He just had Jimmy Carter pass recently. I mean, there was the famous thing about having a lot of the championship drivers at the White House there. It is, I mean, again, I feel for the fans that were stuck out, outside the track there, that missed it, especially with all that was going on there. But when the president comes out to your sporting event, there's a big world out there. So many things that can be taking up that time and all that. Again, however you believe in it. Again, like I said, full disclosure, I was not a George W. Bush fan, but when he came out to run, to Daytona, and he was talking with Greg Biffle and stuff, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, okay, so that's it's something that recognizes the place of the sport itself. Again, we all have our different whatever with all that, but I mean, in the moment, I mean, I know Jeff Gordon was one of the people that didn't I don't know. There was that one time where I know the last time where they had the limousine as the pace car in 2020, and Jeff Gordon was starting to say like he retired too soon because he would have loved to be out there for that. Things like that. There are some things that transcend that when it comes to comes to all that. So again, not to go too far down the road on that, but I just think it's just really cool. It's really cool. It's like if he did the coin flip at the Super Bowl or something like that. I think it really says something that it ends up being a big part of it. I know some people didn't like how much it was getting shown on there. I think it's so important to do that because, again, however people feel about the president, again, it's something that brings attention to the sport. And much like I say with new drivers that come in and new teams that come in, or Cletus McFarland doing this thing in the ARCA race, if it brings more eyes to the sport, I am all for it. And that's a big thing there. So that's where I am with that. And I think it's great. I thought it was great last time in 2020. And if it was another president that came in and came to the track, it would be great if more presidents came to the track. I mean, if it was a more regular thing, if this became like a thing where like every new president came in and they all came to the Daytona 500, I would love that. Like, wouldn't you? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it would be less special, but I don't know. That's my thinking. Johnny Parsons. Did anybody pick Johnny Parsons for last question? I don't know. Johnny Mance, Curtis Turner. I don't think anybody got it. Did somebody? Am I missing something here? Jude Fernandez, I get you. Yeah, imagine Junior seeing that. Especially, I mean, when I mentioned 500 days, like even back in 2001 where they were doing tributes, he was talking about how it kind of took him out of his mental focus there at the track. Like, again, I think that would be a different thing. It was an unfortunate choice. I would not have made it, at least not with the way they were going about it. I would have tried to be I mean, if you're talking about NASCAR on Fox's history in the 25 years, you can't leave out the 2000. I think it would be more of a disservice to leave it out. But doing it tastelessly is a bit worse than that, which I think is, probably riding the line on that too. So, let's see. Where else are we on this? I don't think anybody got that. Did anybody get that? Okay, we'll jump to the next question here. Let's just do a couple more here. So it's about 10 o'clock here Pacific, so I know it's getting late wherever else anybody is. I don't know if we have a lot of West Coast. We still got 100 people here. Usually this, again, I know we have new people in here because usually we have maybe about 60 people in here. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you're enjoying the trivia segment, so I won't delay that more. Let me get into the next one here. Let's see. Well, that's kind of a 1 in 4 question. That's not as good. No, that one's easy too. Shoot, come on. Ooh, this is good. Here we go. Here's a distant history question. We're looking for a number. How many grueling days of time trials were there for the first Southern 500? How many grueling days of time trials were there for the first Southern 500? Your Eastern Standard Time. Okay, yeah, there you go. Right on. No, I get you. I used to do night shift too, so I totally understand. Yeah, especially on the later side there. But yeah. How many grueling days of time trials were there for the first Southern 500? Is that the one? I think that's the one where it's 82 cars, or is that the second one? Let me get that pulled up on my second screen here in the meantime. Come on. The scroll on my mouse has not been working as well lately. Hopefully it's better here. 75 cars. I guess 82 is the second year. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, and having the pole sitter finish last in an 82 car field. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. How many grueling days of time trials were there for the first Southern 500? We get guesses for 4 and 3 in a full week. There you go. Your night shift too, not tomorrow. Okay, right on. There you go. Okay. Let's see. Ooh, that's a good trivia question too. We'll end with yours, Joseph. That'll be a good way to wrap it up. How many grueling days of time trials were there for the first Southern 500? The answer is 15. 15. So actually, Archer, you're closest without going over in a full week. We're talking 2 weeks in a day. So there you go. 15. That was not gonna be my guess. I was kind of going for like, yeah, maybe 5 days, kind of like Big G had there. Alrighty. Okay, yeah, 15 days. Imagine 15 days of qualifying. You probably gotta fit other races in between just to cover all that. I mean, who knows? Crazy. All right, Joseph Schneiderman, let's do your question to kind of wrap up, and I'll go ahead and have you determine who gets the right answer here. I'll go ahead and read it off. And again, thank you for your super chat for $5. Trivia. Richard Petty won the Daytona 500. I almost called it the Richard Petty Invitational. Won the Daytona 500 in 4 different makes of car. Which make did he win the most Daytona 500s in? All right. Yeah, COTA moved up on the schedule, and it's a shorter version of COTA. Remember, they're not going to go they're not going to go to the tip of the switchblade knife or whatever at the end of that course. I guess they don't want Marco Andretti to lose the rear of the car again, or the rear of the truck again, like in that truck race. That'll be interesting. I think that'll actually be a pretty good race. Probably feel more like Portland or something with it being much shorter. Richard Petty won the Daytona 500 in 4 different makes of car. Which make did he win the most Daytona 500s in? That is the question. Again, good one, Joseph. So we'll wrap up on that. I'll leave it to you, Joseph, when you reveal the answer. We got guesses for Plymouth and Dodge and Pontiac. I'll jump in. I'm gonna say the Dodge. Dodge seems like the most correct answer. I don't know if it was more than Plymouth. There's no trucks at COTA. Oh no, that's too bad. I'm still gonna go with Dodge, but we'll see. I've seen good guesses for Pontiac, Plymouth, and COTA. Joe knows about Richard Petty. Right on. There you go. Yeah, feel free, Joe, whenever you want to say the answer on that. I'll leave it to you. You can post in the chat there as well. Looks like we got a good number of answers. I think we're probably pretty good here. Plymouth, it's a good question because, yeah, I mean, you think about the different paint schemes he ran or the different eras. Wins in the 60s, 70s, and then the one in 81 there as well. There we go. All right. So we get the chance. Go ahead and post the answer here. While you do that, I'm going to go ahead and look in here to see if we got tech inspection results. I don't think we do still. No, I don't see anything on there. Okay, 81 in a Buick, 79 in an Olds, 73 and 74 in a Dodge, but he won 64, 66, and 71 in a Plymouth. Joseph, excellent. Very good statistic, and thank you for getting the full context there. Excellent. So several of you got that one there. Natman527, it looks like you were the first one on the button there, so good for you. And Rusty Ralston and 611 Hornet, you got it as well. So there you go. BMW. Yeah, that'd be fun. Maybe going through a time machine there. Maybe the future version of Legacy Motor Club will be BMW or something. Who knows? Alrighty. Well, tell you what, folks, it's been a great show here tonight. Again, we're still waiting to hear from the results from post-race inspection. I don't see an announcement on Pockrace's page here, but pending those results, the article for tonight's race will be about AJ Allmendinger and his last place finish there in the Daytona 500, his first DNF at Daytona. The articles for the Xfinity truck and dual races are already online at lastcar.info. Other than that, I think that'll probably do it for this evening here, folks. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Daytona is always one of our really big shows. I know we have some new viewers in here, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. I encourage you to tune in next week after the action in Atlanta. About 15 minutes after that race, we'll be talking about that weekend's racing as well as the news, and we'll do some trivia here as well. We'll cover that. In the meantime, my Patreon is patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. My Twitter feed, or X, is at LastCarOnBrock. If you want to see me rage about broadcast or just share some other stuff from NASCAR history. In the meantime, I have a video I'm looking to work on tomorrow. We'll have more updates on that getting pretty soon. But in the meantime, feel free to check out the other videos on this channel, and I'll see you all next time. Have a great President's Day weekend, folks.